Sacred Symbols, a PlayStation podcast, is brought to you by, well, you. If you want to learn how to support our show, go to colinslaststand.com. Greetings and salutations. Welcome back to Sacred Symbols, a PlayStation podcast. This is episode 118. My name is Colin Moriarty. I'm joined as always by Chris, the mighty Raygun. Chris, how are you today?
I'm good. Still in New York. Still here.
Good. Are you ever going to leave New York?
I don't know. Maybe not.
I don't think you should. I don't think you should ever leave New York again. Good to be here with you today. And of course, Chris, I think everyone will have seen, maybe I won't put it in the description. Maybe it'll just be a surprise. But for the first time ever in 118 episodes, we're going to have a three-way on this. I'm going for that three.
Well,
like I'm Steve Novak.
Maybe don't put it that way necessarily.
Oh, okay. We've brought Dustin Furman back, our executive producer and editor. Dustin, welcome back to the show.
Hey, I'm glad to be back. This is awesome. I'm excited.
Cool. Yeah, I thought that we would try to do this three-way. That's not a good way to put it.
Whatever works.
I thought we would try to do this menage a trois.
Oh my god!
And see if we can make this work. Everyone really missed Chris last week, but of course also enjoyed Dustin. I just wanted to see how this worked, if it's anything worth doing. So, gentlemen, let's see how it goes. We're obviously all recording remotely. Everyone can give their feedback at their leisure. Dominic Brandt wrote into us on Patreon, like everyone can, and says, nothing to say other than I really enjoyed Dustin on last week's episode. Of course, I miss our sweet boy Chris, but I'd love to see Dustin make another appearance in the future. Well, here he is.
Yeah.
There you go.
Here he is.
An immediate wish fulfillment.
I know, it's incredible. I'm fast. I move quick over here. I'm really hot. I just worked out not too long ago, and I'm still basically profusely sweating even after I got out of the shower.
Oh, gross.
I don't like that. Yeah, it's disgusting. So, welcome, everyone. Sacred Symbols, PlayStation Podcast, our weekly PlayStation podcast. You can get it 3 days early and ad-free on Patreon at patreon.com/colinslaststand. Support us over there. Like 10,000 or so of you do each and every month. Well, we put up the show each week, of course. Sacred Symbols Plus is our supplemental podcast, only for patrons. Last week, we did a little bit of a gut check. We went about 100 minutes, Chris and I, talking to you guys about how you're feeling about PS5. Pretty negative episode, Chris. Wouldn't you say? Pretty negative?
I guess. I feel like it was more just concerned than it was like outright negative, but I could definitely see that interpretation.
Sure.
We weren't outpouring with love, I guess.
No. I wanted it to be a reflection of the way the audience felt, and anyone can go back and read that thread on Patreon. Dustin, you haven't deleted that thread yet.
No, not yet.
Have you? No. And you haven't deleted any episodes of the show.
No, but I'm thinking about it, honestly.
Yeah. All right,
so
good. Let's
just
definitely keep,
just something to think about.
Definitely keep deleting episodes of the show. It's really good when you do that.
Yeah.
So that was the gut check last week. This week, I don't know what we're going to do for Sacred Symbols Plus, but we'll let you know. We're getting close. We're 6 weeks or so away from the launch, and I am very excited about it. But before we get into the video game chicanery, let's say, I did want to talk a little bit about something that a lot of people have been tweeting at me about, messaging me, DMing me, sliding into those DMs if you're able. And of course, writing to us on Patreon. So Tyler Kidder wrote into us, and he ain't kidding, by the way. No? All right. Chris and Colin, and by the way, Dustin, you just have to understand that people write to Chris and I. If you stick around long enough, maybe they'll start including you. Right. So I don't want you to feel left out or anything like that. Don't feel sad.
Too late.
It says,
I'm always sad. That's the key.
That is the key to being a good editor, I think.
You're going to fit in great around here.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh, he's going to fit in wonderfully on this show. Tyler says, Chris and Colin, why is having a different opinion than someone such a bad thing? And not only the gaming industry, but anything in life. I've noticed recently if you have a different opinion on anything, you will be shunned. An example is people being upset with you. He's talking about me, about CD Projekt's latest crunch or political beliefs. We're going to talk about all that later, the crunch thing, so stand by for that. Many people in the gaming industry have resorted to blocking people that have any opinion that they don't agree with. That has become quite obvious. The people that preach unity are not accepting of others. Furthermore, I enjoy that you and Chris don't agree on half the shit you discuss. It's a great way for you and the audience to see different perspectives. Well, I agree with you, Tyler. Thank you for writing in. And Tyler's thoughts reflect many people writing into us this week, gentlemen. And I just wanted to say this. I actually don't usually take handwritten notes for this show. I usually take handwritten notes for Knockback, but I wanted to write some things down on one of my 7,000 legal pads that are strewn around the house just to make sure that I touched on everything that I wanted to touch on here, at least in some cursory form. And then I'll throw it over to the guys if they have anything to say. But ultimately, Colin's Last Stand, Sacred Symbols, Knockback, SideQuest. I mean, these are my brands, my shows. I own this brand and the buck stops with me. And for our brand and our show, I want to put out a different kind of message than is the prevailing wisdom in a lot of different circles, which is that everyone is welcome. And I feel like there's just an undercurrent, a background radiation of toxicity that's growing and growing and growing in our industry, but also everywhere else as politics just invades and permeates everything that we do. And I don't really want to be a part of that. I don't want to be a part of it with my brand. I don't want to be a part of it with my personality. And it doesn't mean that I don't have strongly held political views. I do. I talk about them sometimes. Politics are really important and they come up on this show pretty often when it's necessary, but I don't want to be exclusive. I want to be for everyone. I don't want to have a political litmus test and I don't want to be exclusionary. I want everyone to feel comfortable here. Now, of course, there are exceptions. I don't want hateful people in our audience. I don't want people that disrespect or abuse other people and all of that kind of stuff. And I obviously don't want the fringe extremists in our community either. But I really don't think that there are very many of those people overall. And I just feel like by being exclusionary and adding to the toxicity by telling people that they don't belong, by judging people based on their political beliefs, their strongly held political beliefs that are totally mainstream, such as, for instance, just being a conservative or a Republican in the United States, everyone is welcome here on our show and listening to our show, as long as they don't say hateful or terrible things to me or to the audience or to each other or whatever. I mean, I just don't think that this is a reflection of most people. And I don't want people to lose their ability to escape from the real world through our show, even though sometimes the real world permeates this show. I want people to feel like they belong here. And I don't want people to feel like they have to be categorized and that they've been cast out because they vote for X or vote for Y. It really has nothing to do with our show, which is why we have a really diverse audience, whether it comes to race or religion or location, nationality, whatever the case might be. Everyone is welcome here. No one is going to be judged based on their immutable characteristics. No one is going to be unwelcome based on any of that kind of stuff. We will judge everyone based as individuals. And I do not want to play into this nonsense anymore. If it's fine if other communities and other people want to play that game, but I don't. When you look back at this moment, you're never going to be able to look at me and say like Colin contributed to the toxicity, because I didn't. I haven't. I won't. And that's pretty much all I have to say about that particular situation. If you're listening and you're a totally normal person, which most of you are, welcome, enjoy. I don't care who you go into the fucking booth to vote for in November. It has nothing to do with this show. It has nothing to do with me. It has nothing to do with Chris. It has nothing to do with Dustin. It has nothing to do with anything we talk about unless it has to do with games. So welcome one, welcome all. That's all I have to say about that. Is there anything, Chris, you want to add before we move on? I'll shoot it to Dustin too after that.
No, yeah, I think the moment that you shun people, I feel like that's the moment you just sort of give ammo to people that you would really be better off not giving ammo to. I feel like, I feel like the best way for people to develop and grow is to communicate with each other, regardless of whether or not their lines may be. And, sometimes those lines are pretty thick and sometimes those lines are pretty intense, but I ultimately think it's better to just, I think it's better to have an open community where people can actually talk, so that maybe people will actually have like an understanding that comes from outside themselves that isn't just sort of entirely antagonistic. Because I feel like the second you do that, you're just sort of throwing people to the wolves, and the wolves kind of like that, I feel like. So
no, they definitely do.
So yeah, I would agree.
Yeah, it's not, the letter brought up that Chris and I don't agree on a lot of things. We don't. We're actually pretty politically diametrically opposed. It just never comes up because it's really not relevant to our friendship or to what we do here on the show. So if we can do it in action, see, that's the thing, is I want to speak with actions. And I think that by having an inclusive community of welcoming shows that are funny and silly and stupid, self-deprecating, all that kind of stuff that can take people not only inform them and entertain them, but take them just out of the game for a little while so they don't have to worry about the real world. I think that is doing a lot more. And I don't know if it's a smart business move or not for my business, but I don't care because it's really just not me. It's really not reflective of the way I've ever conducted myself. And no matter, I've always been an outspoken conservative. I've always spoken my mind and all those kinds of things, but I've never been exclusionary. And that's why I was so comfortable, and I'm still comfortable, frankly, defending the normal Trump voter in the United States as an example, as being a normal, good person, because I know many of them, just as I'm willing to say the same thing about someone I don't agree with at all. Not that I really agree with Trump very much, but someone like Bernie Sanders on the left, who I don't agree with at all, but clearly I think his supporters are largely fine. I don't have any problem with them. Many of them listen to this show. So I want to have a big tent. That's what politics used to be about, by the way. That term used to be thrown around all the time. Big tent politics, the idea that you would get as many people involved as possible. So I don't know if it's good for my business or not, but that's the way it's going to be because it's my business and I want to have an opening environment for everyone. Dustin, do you have anything to add?
No, I think that everything both of you said was I'm right on board with. And honestly, when you bring up the business aspect of whether or not it's good or bad, I don't know what you think. Personally, fuck whether or not it's good or bad for the business, because I personally think it's the right thing to do is to not be literally prejudiced towards people because of their beliefs. I mean, that's when you take the word prejudice, it's literally prejudging people. And so, yeah, I'm on board. I think that, people should be judged based on who they are as a person. And yeah, I'm on board.
Yeah, I feel bad for people. I've gotten so many letters, DMs, just people reaching out privately, many scores of people in all these different places, just kind of bummed out because they're like, we didn't even really do anything. Like we're just being thrown away by these audiences that we've supported for years or by these groups that we've supported for years or these support creators and that we've even paid for their content and stuff. And I don't ever want someone to look back and feel like they were excluded from CLS. I can't imagine that's bad for business. I think most people agree with that. I think most people see when I watch football, I'm a huge football fan, as everyone knows. And I am so tired of hearing about this shit when I watch football. I don't care. I just want to sit down and watch football. And I think a lot of people feel that way. It doesn't mean that you can't care about politics or care about the issues of the day. It just means that the issues of the day don't go with everything.
Yeah. No, I mean, you can't, if you spend like the entirety of your time alive, like wallowing around in that shit, that gets really depressing pretty quick. And I don't think it's healthy for anybody really, but
no, it's definitely not. It's definitely not. So I just wanted to say that to kind of put it out there and start our show with just a little bit of information about that and the positive things that our show does, I think, for a lot of people too. And I wanted to call out someone that wrote into us about this. And this is not sarcastic. We really do, I think, help people out sometimes. James Solar wrote into us, said, "Hey, CNC, short time, first time. I started listening to Sacred Symbols and Knockback." That's the retro and nostalgia podcast we do with my brother in mid-2019. In early 2020, using some self-control, I decided to only listen to the CLS podcast while working out. I'm happy to share that I've lost about 70 pounds since the start of 2020. I'm no one important, but I love your shows, and listening while working out has probably added years to my life. Thank you for everything. You'll never fully know the positive impact and reach CLS has had. Well, thank you, James. Congratulations to you. Dustin weighs like 70 pounds, so.
I wish. Damn, dude. Hold on. I have to comment on this because I don't like that he said that I'm no one important. Just because, just because you're not important as far as like I put out a product that people listen to, it doesn't mean you're not important. I mean, I'm sure there's many people that you're important to.
Yes. I don't like that kind of language either. Leave the self-deprecation to me.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah, the audience doesn't need to do that.
Yeah, just live. I mean, at least
we do it enough for everybody.
Yeah, it can be catharsis for you, but you don't have to participate. All right, Dustin, this is really convenient. Actually, I wanted to kick it over to you. We were talking a little bit earlier about Patreon and many of the perks that our audience gets over there, including ad-free podcasts and early access and all of that. We usually don't hammer on this, but we are adding something fundamentally new to Patreon. By the time you hear this, it will be live, and it's something people have been asking for like 3 years. So I want to kick it over to you, Dustin, to just explain what's happening here with our Discord server.
Sure. Yeah. So we have heard everybody really interested in having a Discord server, and we are finally doing it. So there is a post on Patreon from me, all the details, but I'll lay them out real quick for you. So Right now, when we launch the Discord, it'll be integrated into your Patreon account. So there is in the post a guide on how to, combine your Discord and your Patreon together so you can get those perks. Now, we have a very large community here on Patreon, and we are so thankful for that. But we want to make sure that when we do this Discord, things are done properly and that there is proper moderation. So to start with this Discord, we are starting that the $10 and above patrons will have access to the Discord server. You'll be able to get that directly through your perk. And the reason we're doing that is in no way to try to get people to upgrade to that $10 level in order to be a part of it. We simply just want to make sure that as we start this entire new thing for the company, that we're able to do it right. Just because there is, like I said, with 10,000 people total, we don't want it to be a total shit show day one with 1 million people and, who knows. So right now, as I said, $10 patrons will get instant access. And the plan is that once things settle and we feel confident that we can let in the main floodgate, we will reduce it down to the $5 level as well, where you can come and hang out and talk to other people in the community and probably hear from us as well. Not probably, definitely.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
So pretty exciting, I think. I still don't really know what Discord is, but Dustin does, and that's all that really matters. So,
oh man, it's an interesting place.
I am looking forward to exploring it more. So that's going to be a thing that we're going to have for our $5 and $10 audience, as Dustin said. And thank you so much for your support and your patience on that. That's just the beginning of a few revamps we're going to do for social media and all of that. I know people want us to get Reddit going again and stuff. We did secure our Reddit URL a while ago and all that. So we're going to get all of that going, and it'll be a slow burn, but we'll obviously let you know on the show as these things all develop, but keep a close eye out on that. Boys, do you, either of you, I guess I'll start with you, Chris, have an opinion on this Amazon Luna thing before we continue? I did want to bring this up just because it's a new cloud-based service that Amazon announced on their website. If you just go to amazon.com/Luna, you can see it. It's introducing Luna, Amazon's cloud gaming service where it's easy to play great games on devices you already own. No waiting for lengthy downloads or updates, just play, and you can request early access. They're showing off games like Control, Metro Exodus, Assassin's Creed Valhalla is going to be on there, and some others, Resident Evil, Biohazard, Bloodstained, etc. I got to say, I don't think I have literally heard almost nobody even mention this thing, but I'm curious if you guys have any thoughts on it, Chris.
It's the only time I heard about it genuinely was when we talked about it briefly on the last Sacred Symbols Plus episode we did, and then the next time after that was just now. So I'm not hearing anybody really talk about it. I think even Stadia had more word of mouth going for it than Amazon Luna does. And I gotta be real, the lack of shit that I'm seeing about it, the fact that it is something that is following Stadia and is essentially like what that was. It's like, hey, here's another cloud gaming thing with, where you could stream your games, and, it's competing with all these other hardware and all these other platforms that, PlayStation and Xbox and xCloud and PlayStation Now, where you could download and install your shit or stream them. And it's just like, it just doesn't seem like, I feel like this is something that will exist for people to dabble into, but I feel like the second anybody gets really interested in the hobby through this, they'll probably want to invest in like a proper machine. Like I feel like they're working on a gateway drug almost, and I don't think it's necessarily what they're intending to do. But I just don't foresee anybody who's like particularly like serious about like video games, who actually like wants the best experience possible, who is really interested in the latest releases, who's willing to pay a premium to get access to these games. I don't see those people foregoing the inconsistencies and the blatant flaws of a purely streaming gaming platform in favor of, platforms that are just far better suited for the hobby.
What about you, Dustin? How are you feeling about it?
Yeah, this is an interesting one just because I think that the biggest thing that Amazon has to worry about is Stadia, but not in the way that you would think, in the fact that Stadia has kind of soured the market on, these streaming services. But what's interesting is that Amazon definitely has the technical prowess to potentially pull off something that could be better than Stadia, since they have their whole Amazon Web Service background. So one thing that they are doing that is distinctly different than Stadia is that there is a subscription service that includes a full library of games called Luna Plus. So, because I know that a lot of people, their problem with Stadia is that they're like, why would I spend $60 for the ability to stream a game that I could never download, right? So in this scenario, they're kind of going more the Netflix style approach. And they've also talked about that. I know at least right now they're partnering with Ubisoft to do an Ubisoft channel. So, and that would be an additional fee. So it could be kind of interesting if we start to see more of these channels pop up and people can kind of pick and choose what kind of content they want. But either way, it's all going to come down to the quality of the service and how well it actually works, which, quick plug here, I just did a video all about the PlayStation Now and some other streaming services for SideQuest. And the reality is that none of these services just work that well. So the first company that can come out with a service that actually is close enough to a console experience to be worthwhile could make it. But again, like I said, I think Google has potentially soured things for the market.
The interesting thing to me about Amazon is just how uneven their gaming approach has been, because on one hand, they own Twitch and they famously outbid Google for Twitch, and they do great things over there. On the other hand, they have Amazon Game Studios, which has largely been a complete failure. People famously know that that game Crucible was like released and then basically unreleased. I'm pretty sure, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And then they're working on that MMO New World. Like Crucible was so poorly received as an MMO third-person shooter that they literally removed it. And then they have the Amazon Lumberyard game tech, the engine too, that they've built that no one seems to use or care about either. Star Citizen is being built on it, as an example. So it's a little weird to see Amazon kind of just throwing money around. I know they want to be everywhere. They're kind of like Google, where they just make these smaller investments that are small for them. But it is shocking that on one hand, they just completely dominate a section of the industry. On the other hand, they are really struggling in places where it's actually way more important for them to get credibility in some ways, including with the Lumberyard, which could be a real cash cow if they could just get it to work. It's based on Crytek. And getting Amazon Game Studios, which I'm surprised hasn't just been completely shut down from both the Orange County and Seattle teams. So I just wanted to throw that out there, that a little bit of an uneven approach by Amazon, but nonetheless, there is the Amazon Luna if you guys want to go check it out.
They're there.
It does exist. I also wanted to throw out last week just a quick update. Michel Ancel, we talked about him, Ubisoft, creator of Rayman, creator of Beyond Good and Evil. We talked about how he kind of just up and left the industry, leaving his 2 games in development hell. So there's been a report in Liberation, or Liberation, which is a French publication, a newspaper. So you guys can go read translations of it if you want. But basically, it's come out that Ancel has seems to have been investigated by Ubisoft internally, not for sexual impropriety, as far as I can tell, but because he's an asshole. And that's basically the charge, is that he's just basically crazy to work for and just a complete nut job to people. And he denies it, so we will give him the benefit of the doubt. But nonetheless, you guys can go look into updates on that. Chris, I did want to ask you about this. We've been seeing this with a few games recently, but Destiny 2 is apparently going to lose 40% of its game size in an update. I don't know if you saw this.
Yeah.
I think it also happened maybe with a Call of Duty game recently or something. But how do you feel about that? About basically having to re-download these smaller packages as they figure out how to better manage the size of these games, which is really kind of relevant to what we were talking about on our Tech Focus podcast, Dustin, also about the size of the SSD. So, Chris, how you feeling about Destiny 2 being a little bit more manageable?
Yeah, no, I'm all for it. I know that this is from a headline perspective, it's like, oh, here's a bunch of stuff that you paid for that is now kind of going away. But the reality of Destiny 2 is that it's a pseudo MMO FPS. There's a lot of content that is in the game, that has been in the game since launch, that quite frankly just doesn't get a lot of use, that really isn't visited by the overwhelming majority of players. I don't even think a minority of players really go to some of these places. There are locations that, as somebody who's been playing Destiny for a long time, I haven't been to, I haven't been to IO or Titan or Nessus for any reason other than to just grind shit. And I'd rather just grind shit on new locations that actually have new and interesting things to do than just be forced to replay these old spaces over and over again that just don't really evolve in the way that a game like that really needs it to feel like a loss if it were to go. So, the game being more manageable, the game being smaller, the game being a little bit more focused and less cluttered, I'm all about it. There are some things that I think, might be a little bit of a nuisance. I know they're sunsetting some weapons, and they're delving into the sandbox in weird retroactive ways that, aren't necessarily the most comforting things, but overall, I'm not really bothered by this at all. Destiny needs to be smaller, and the most recent Call of Duty needs to be really, really, really a lot smaller, because
isn't it like 200 gigabytes or something?
It's getting there, man. It's like, I don't know what the hell they did. I don't know if they just don't compress anything or what, but that game is egregiously big. I saw on Twitter somebody wasted 90% of their data cap just updating this freaking thing.
I want to just, before we get into what we're playing, I just want to touch on something else here. A couple other things. This one's for you too, Chris. Jose Horash wrote into us. Horace. Let's call him Horace. Ooh. It's not very nice. He says, "Hey there, gents. As you guys already know, the Crash 4 trophy list is out. So how about another platinum challenge? Chris, if you cannot platinum the game 1 week after release, you buy me one game of my choice." I was going to ask for a PS5, but I don't want you to spend $500. What do you say, Chris? Chris, you don't have to take this challenge, but I'm surprised he offers it so flippantly, considering the last time a challenge like this was made, you destroyed it with really no problem at all. And I did show you the Crash 4 trophy list. It doesn't look as hard as Crash Team Racing's. What are you thinking about it?
Crash Bandicoot games have a tendency of looking like they're very easy until you play them, and then you realize the pain that you have signed yourself up for. That's definitely something that I kind of locked myself into with Crash Team Racing. That's a game I know intimately inside and out. But I'll be real, when I agreed to do that trophy thing, I was not anticipating that, hey, by the way, this game has Nitro Kart tracks in it that you don't remember at all. And just all these time trials that you never did when you were a kid. And okay, well, this is definitely something else than what I anticipated. I thought it was going to be easier than it was, but I still crushed it. But that's a very specific game. Crash Team Racing as a kart racer is far different than the mainline, linear platformer Crash games, which I, quite frankly, am just not that good at. I have no hope of getting the platinum trophy in this game.
Interesting.
Maybe if I finish that game and I feel like an itch, and I feel like I'm getting close, and I probably could do it, I'll probably get around to it, but I'm definitely not going to rush it this time. I blistered my fingers that last time, dude. I remember actually straight up. This is the first and only time that's ever happened where I've bled from my fingers from playing a video game. Never again.
It's like you were down there in the mine.
Yeah, no, I was crippled, man. I straight up couldn't play video games for a week and a half.
Yeah, it's I did not anticipate this sort of defeatism, but nonetheless, I guess, Jose, you've been turned down.
Yeah. We're dealing with an older, wiser Chris that has been scarred from the past. So he knows what his limits are. And honestly, I don't blame him, because, I mean, my question is if it's going to play like the Crash remaster or the remake, because that game was hard. So yeah, I wouldn't take this challenge either.
Yeah, I'm not even interested in playing this game. It is out, I think, by the time everyone hears this. It has been released, and so we'll have more information on that next week, obviously, from Chris. Are you going to play this game, Dustin?
I want to, but I don't think I'm going to jump on it instantly. I'll probably wait for it to go on sale. I'm more interested in the Star Wars Squadrons tomorrow, I think.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, that game. You know what turned me on from that? I hate to admit this, but the trophy list sucks in that game. It totally turned me off from playing it. I don't
Colin,
even care anymore.
You are fucked. Okay.
I know.
Because you can't live your life this way.
It's just so many multiplayer trophies. It's almost all multiplayer trophies.
Who cares?
I can't. Oh, I try. Sorry, if you hear that banging in the background, I'm trying to kill a fly. I care.
I'm saying this, Colin, because you have acknowledged the problem you have with trophies ruining games for you. So you need to rise up to the moment and just put it out of your mind if there's something you want to play like this.
There's just I don't have that kind of strength. You know, I don't have that kind
You're
of...
already playing it, though. You're trying to take this fly out of the sky. Like, you're already, like, mentally, like...
I know, I'm a TIE fighter pilot, basically, already, so... Well, nonetheless, we'll have more information on both of those games, I guess, next week. And before we get into what we're playing now, though, Brandon Schallenberger wrote into us with a pretty important question. He says, actually, he uses a word, by the way, that I hate. And I want to see if you guys know what word that is. I think you'll be able to pick it out. He says, hey, boys, what do you find more satisfying, ripping a fat piss or laying down a mondo turd?
It's definitely mondo.
Yeah, it's a horrible word. It's just a horrid word, mondo.
I like it because I hear it so infrequently. So when I hear it, it's like a little, it's like, oh, yeah.
Well, Chris, talk to me. Do you like ripping a fat piss or laying down a mondo turd? What is more satisfying?
What is a fat piss?
I don't
like, you know what I mean? Like, I feel like that's really confusing me because I don't know if, I don't know. Is this guy having like a fire hose experience?
I guess. Yeah. Kind of like, spraying. What is it? I guess that's been in a few movies and TV shows where like that's spraying back on the person while they're peeing and stuff. It's a little disgusting, I guess, but
it is a little disgusting. I don't know. I would have to go with the mondo turd, I guess, because I don't know what a fat piss is.
I don't. I feel like it's like a piss that has like an unusually large circumference that shouldn't be coming out of your pee hole. You know, that sounds like what a fat piss would be to me, and so that makes me uncomfortable. I'm going to go with a mondo turd as well. Dustin, what say you?
I'm going to have to say the mondo turd, specifically because ripping the fat piss, I mean, I had not a traumatic experience, but when in 1999, I saw Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace, and this was actually the Clone Wars, I think, and about halfway through the movie, I thought I was going to burst, and I did not want to miss any of the movie. Like, this was a big deal for me. So I just held it. And then I just remember after the movie was done, I was like, man, this is just such a terrible experience because I refused to go to the bathroom. So it's honestly surprising I did not give myself like an infection or something. So, I mean, honestly, the same situation could be applied to, a mondo turd situation, but based on personal experience, no more ripping fat pisses for me.
Yeah, so God, for Attack of the Clones, that's 2002, by the way. So no one write in with any of your corrections. But God, for that movie, you almost gave yourself sepsis or something like that. So that was really worth it.
That would have been something. I mean, I already have not forgotten it. So, I mean, it's just what he made it even better.
Let me be honest with you here about something.
Sure.
I'm gonna betray the fact that I have what must be some sort of elderly man body, but when I hold a pee in for too long, I have a hard time even peeing at some point. Like, it's just like when I hold my pee in for too long and I'm about to burst, I go to the bathroom and I can only pee a little bit to like let the pressure out. Then I got to like let it marinate again for a little while. Then I go back in and I get the rest of it out.
Yeah, that's just the passage of time, I guess, because I don't even understand what the hell that means.
Yeah, I must have a fucking messed up prostate because this has always been the truth. Because I tell people this now and they're like, you should really get your prostate checked out. And I'm like, first of all, I have, but second of all, like I used to be online when I used to drink beer at bars as opposed to whiskey or bourbon, I would be on the line for the bathroom like in perpetuity. Basically, the entire night.
Yeah.
Sucked.
Oh my God. Yeah, you're like one of my friends is exactly like that. He just like we'll go out drinking and then he'll be with us like maybe 40% of the time.
It's horrible. It's a horrible thing. You feel like I remember people making fun of me online like at different bars as they see me over and over again if they're like at the table next to the bar. So I started drinking bourbon and that just completely dehydrates you. You never pee. You don't pee for days if you drink enough bourbon. So
you were going to some pretty hopping bars if there's a line for the men's bathroom. That's pretty. I've only seen that a handful of times that like really like happened in places. You know what I mean?
The bar that comes to mind for me with this is it actually just closed down. It was an old Northeastern bar called Connor Larkin's. That's where I remember like when someone says something mean to you and you remember it forever. That happened at that bar, and it was at Connor Larkin's on Huntington Avenue in Boston. All right, that's enough of that. We're about a half an hour into the show now, or a little more. So let's talk about what we're playing. Dustin, you are our newest and cutest guest, and Daniel the Awesome wrote into us. He says, hi. And by the way, a lot of people wrote in about this game. He says, hi there, Chimichurri and Chimichanga. Have either of you taken a look at Genshin Impact? It launched last week, and despite technically being a phone game, it's been at the top of the Twitch charts. It looks like a Tales game, plays like Breath of the Wild, but it's fueled by Gacha MTX. If it does well, do you think this opens the door for more high-quality mobile games to come to console? Keep making all of the days great. This game seems to be a little bit of a phenomenon, and it says you're playing it, Dustin, so tell me about it.
Yeah, so I've been interested in this game since like last March. I previewed it at PAX, and it's interesting that he wrote in and said it's filled with MTX and gotchas, because from what I can tell based on a lot of the conversation online is that people are surprised at how much this game gives you for free. Specifically, since I was looking into this, Forbes wrote an article. The author's name is Paul Tassi, and he wrote an article about when do you hit the paywall in Genshin Impact. And he says that he played 20 hours and didn't feel the need to spend any money the entire time. And it's not until now that he's starting to get to the point where he could spend more money in order to progress. But basically, instead, he's just doing dailies and stuff like that. So, yeah, this game is really interesting, though. The phone aspect is particularly weird because as soon as you mention a game, it's like, oh, it's on phones and consoles. Then, like most people, myself included, just move that information into the trash section of your brain. But this one is really weird because I actually was checking it out on my phone today, and it's not like any phone game that at least I'm aware of right now. But yeah, it's weird because it is definitely like very Breath of the Wild. The way you move around, you have like a paraglider thing, but it brings a lot of new mechanics to the table. And one of the most interesting things that I'm finding is that there's a whole like elemental aspect to the combat. And so basically, like, you could with one character shoot up a tornado, and then with another character that has a flame ability, shoot some fire into it and create a fire tornado in order to do like maximum damage or whatever. And so, yeah, it seems like this game has an interesting sandbox aspect to its combat, which is really cool. I have only played about 30 minutes of the final version that I just checked out today before we started recording, but I did play some of the beta, and so far I think it's really awesome. And like I said, the microtransactions so far, which they were in the beta but not really fully implemented, but I didn't really see them as a problem then. I'll have to report back once I get more time in. But yeah, this game is a real interesting one.
Yeah, people have been bringing this one up to me because it really does look like a Tales game. I don't think I'm going to check it out. Also, it has no platinum trophy, but the by the way, I'm only saying that to kid. I mean, I noticed that, but I wouldn't probably play it anyway. But my assumption is that this is the Hitman style where they're trying to leave room on the list to just continuously release trophies, which is a good idea. But then there could be no platinum attached to it, which is unfortunate. Just to be clear about terminology, by the way, and Dustin already brought this up, but MTX is microtransactions. Gacha is a Japanese style, basically capsule toy game. So you go into basically, if you ever go to Japan, you see these massive stores. They're basically everywhere in subway stations and other places, but you just put in yen coin and you get whatever you get out of these little capsules. And so that's kind of been going towards the way things are done in video games and have been for a long time coming out of Japan. So I just wanted people to know the terminology. It's GACHA, in case you're curious. Chris says you're playing Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1 and 2. Talk to me about that.
Yeah, I'm still hammering away at that. I'm really just kind of killing time until Crash, because I'm actually pretty excited about Crash. But I've been hammering away at Tony Hawk, and I still like it. I'm still not really that good at it. I feel a little disappointed because I feel like I remember being really good at Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2 specifically, but I guess that's just completely inaccurate because I am struggling to get these freaking tasks done that I swear to God I did. Unless I maybe cheated, unless there was like some cheat codes that let you break through the entire game, which there probably were, honestly. But It's wild though, because it's like this really is one of those games where like I know I'm terrible at it. I would never stream myself playing this. I would never record myself playing this, but it really is just fun. It really is just still so good. Like even after I've spent like a decent amount of time with it, it's frustrating that I'm not as good as I remember being, but it's still so good.
Yeah, it is fun. I do put it on every few days to just play around with it for a little while, and it is frustrating for me too because I'm not good at it. I don't really even understand. I mean, I understand how to play it, but I don't understand how to play it, if that makes any sense. There's a difference between understanding the button inputs and then being really elegant at playing the game. Like my brother Dagan used to be really good at these games. So I have a real aversion to games I'm not naturally good at. I just don't like playing games that I really have to try at, as opposed to games that are natural to me. So like 2D side scrollers are really natural to me. Shooters are really natural to me, etc. So it's a little bit of a weird space for me because I don't really want to put in the time to get any better at it, but I do enjoy putting it in. And of course, the soundtrack is just phenomenal. I was reminded the other night when I was playing, and I tweeted out about it, that there's that song Here and Now by the Ernies on there, which I hadn't heard. I mean, it scratched like this primordial thing in me where I'm like, holy shit, I haven't heard this song in 20 years. And it was ironic because then I read about those guys, and they are from Richmond, where I'm living now in Virginia. So it was a little bit of a weird sort of a full circle thing. But the Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1 and 2 is out there for download if you guys are interested. I've been playing a few different games. I'll talk about them briefly. So first of all, I just got this hankering to play Castlevania Anthology, which came out last year. And it's Castlevania 1, 2, and 3. It's Super Castlevania, which is Castlevania 4. Bloodlines on Genesis, the Game Boy games. So it's a nice little collection, plus Kid Dracula, which never came out here, the Famicom game. So I sat down and beat the games that I hadn't beaten on the collection yet in the collection. So I sat down and beat Castlevania 3, which is one of my favorite games ever. Sat down and beat Super Castlevania 4, beat Kid Dracula, which I had never beaten before. It's a really weird and unique game. It's kind of like Mega Man, actually. It's really interesting. Highly recommend people check it out. The Kid Dracula sequel came out in the United States on Game Boy, but we never got the original one. So I really enjoyed that. And actually, we got a question. I 100%ed the trophies, by the way, and I wanted to do that as well. And Brent Lindquist wrote into us, though. He says, hey, fellas, I'm playing through Final Fantasy VI for the first time on my SNES Classic, and it's a damn masterpiece. However, I'm wondering, how do you guys feel about save states? I love them for games with password saves, but it feels a little weird to use them in games with built-in save systems, even on a console like the SNES Classic that has them built in. Hope your eye is better, Colin, and hope you can make your way east, Chris. Thank you. I did, by the way, have to go and get my eyes checked out. Everything's, I think, okay. I have to go get a CAT scan in the coming weeks.
Oh, shit.
So we'll see what happens. But nothing, I'm not going to, we'll talk about it more if anything is to worry about.
Yeah, I hope they don't find any cats.
I know. Wouldn't that be fucked up? I'd personally rather a dog scan if I was going to get anything. But so, guys, I wanted to bring up this save state question from Brent. And by the way, of course, you can submit your questions, comments, concerns, thoughts, and ideas to us on Patreon. Because when I was playing Castlevania Anthology, I was using save states on some of the parts of the game where I was like, I just don't want to do this again. You know, like, I'm not great at these games anymore. I've gotten to this point. I don't want to do this whole stage again. I don't want to do this boss fight again. And so I started using the save states, and I really didn't feel guilty about it at all. They're there for you to use if you want, and you don't have to use them. So I have no problem with it. And save states, of course, in my experience, go way back to using Nesticle and SNES 9X and all of the old emulators in the 90s when we were introduced to the idea of just saving every 5 seconds, which was awesome for these games that were so difficult. Do you guys have any aversion to save states? Dustin, we'll start with you.
Yeah, so I've always thought it's weird that some people kind of gatekeep with the whole save state thing, but to me, it's just a way that they can, in a very small way, modernize some of these games, just because so many of these, like you said, you're doing the same thing. If you screw up, you're going to have to do the same thing you just did over and over. So if it lets you play the game and enjoy it, and then that's it. That's all it is. Like, you shouldn't feel the need to prove anything when you're playing a Super Nintendo game at this point, in my mind. So yeah, if you want to use them, great. If you want to challenge yourself and not do it, great. You can tweet about it and everyone will think that you're awesome.
Chris, what do you think?
Yeah, I think there's a time limit. There's a limit of time where it might annoy me, right? Like I don't know if Sekiro had like the Nintendo Switch, like, just, you know, rewind system, you know what I mean? and I beat Sekiro with that weird like rewind system, I'd probably be like, yeah, maybe that's kind of a lame way to do it. But a Super Nintendo game, I mean, come on, like it's been so long at this point. Like I probably wouldn't make my way through this game if this wasn't in it, because there's just so much else vying for my attention and vying for my time, that the idea that I even set aside time to play these old things at all, you know, is a blessing in and of itself. So I think, you know, I think there is a little bit of etiquette as far as like how old the game is necessarily, or how old the game is in relation to like, you know, these old like SNES classics. But for the most part, I don't really care.
Yeah, I think the etiquette just is basically in two different verticals. One is if the game can somehow, if your progress or something affects someone else negatively or positively, then I think that's one thing. I think the other thing, and we've brought this up many times, and trophies are coming up a lot, and that's not intentional, but it is kind of shitty that I was able to earn the Castlevania anthology trophies with save states, which I was. And I have complained about this in the past with like Celeste giving you the option to basically play baby mode and get all the trophies in the game. It's like, what is the point? Castlevania takes a little bit more, Castlevania takes more effort. I would say much more effort, because you still have to play the game, but I did find it a little weird because we don't really know who earned the trophies normally and who didn't. And for some of those games, I certainly didn't earn the trophies organically. So
yeah,
that's worth
I
noting.
feel like the whole appeal of trophies and achievements, at least back when I was getting introduced to them, was like, oh, cool. So I have proof that I did this really hard thing. And if you're just if you're just sort of giving them away, you know, regardless of whether or not you've actually done the hard thing, I think that's kind of lame. But as an experience, like if you want to experience the game and you just don't have time or the patience, like I beat Donkey Kong Country for the first time in like a really, 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 really long time, kind of recently, and I rewound the hell out of that thing, like because I'm just not gonna spend 8 hours killing myself over Donkey Kong Country in 2020, and you know I didn't get a, you know, obviously there's no trophies or achievements or any kind on Switch, so I especially didn't feel guilty about it. But I think that's a fair distinction, to have like trophies and stuff like that kind of locked out of out of that system, or maybe negated if you use that system. But if you want to experience a game like that, I think it's totally valid, especially if it's just so old.
Yeah, I think that it's interesting because I think M2 did the Castlevania anthology for Konami, and it would have been so easy for them to just say like trophies, or if you if like when a save state's activated, trophies are just the trophy packet is turned off. And I know that some other games do stuff like that with cheats, or if you're playing on too low of a difficulty or whatever. So just something to consider there. But nonetheless, I highly recommend that anthology. It's really, really good. It's so packed with just first of all, amazing games, but a shit ton of art and interviews and details and all of these planning documents and stuff. It's very cool. You can see how games were made back in the day on basically graph paper, and it's really neat. So I highly recommend that if you haven't picked it up. I've also gone back and started playing again Bloodstained Curse of the Moon 2. This is an Indie Creates game. It came out this summer. People will remember, actually, like in late spring, it basically came out of nowhere. And it's a sequel to Curse of the Moon, which was basically a prequel to Ritual of the Night. These are all Bloodstained games. I had never beaten this game for some reason, and so I went back and played it again. And I got to say, I'm about halfway through it. This game is exceptional, and I don't want to undersell it in any way by saying, or I guess oversell it in any way by saying, I think this might be my game of the year. This game is phenomenal. It's just an absolutely phenomenal game. And I was talking to my brother about it because he's also into old school retro games. There are really only 3 teams in the world that can make a game like this. And Indie Creates is one of them. The others would be Way Forward and Yacht Club. And this game is just so, in essence, exactly what an NES game is. It's obviously heavily inspired by Castlevania 3, and it's just really, really good. It is beautiful. It sounds great. It plays great. It's dynamic. It's well paced. Really, really enjoying the game. A little confused why I put it down. I think because it came out right when I moved into my house, so I just got distracted. So that's another game I'm playing. And then I also downloaded Ys 8 Lacrimosa of Dana on Vita, so I have something to play in bed. I've been watching The Walking Dead at night for some reason. It's not very good.
No.
I gotta be honest with you. It's really not very good.
It's not.
But the main character, the cop, his whole voice, his drawl bothers me. It comes in and out.
Yeah, it's entirely inconsistent.
it's a little annoying. But nonetheless, I only saw a couple of the seasons, so I'm watching that and I was playing this. This is the newest East game that we have in the West. There is Ys 9, which is coming out soon. But lacrimosa, by the way, I think is a Greek word for crying. I don't know why they had to use that word. But it's really good. It's just a fun action RPG. It's a little bit slow on Vita in terms of load times. People did warn me about that, but I'll have more to say about that as I see more of it. So I'm juggling quite a few balls right now. And that's basically it. So that's everything we're playing. We'll talk more next week about the other games like Crash, etc. As they come out. Boys, let's get into the news. There are a couple of big pieces of news this week and some other minor things that we can touch on as well. I think the biggest piece of news here is number one. It goes a little something like this. During last week's show, we discussed Spider-Man Remastered, a somewhat randomly revealed PlayStation 5 exclusive iteration of Insomniac's 2018 Spider-Man that's due to be available with PS5 at launch starting November 12th. A post on the official PlayStation blog from Insomniac's community director and friend of the show, James Stevenson, clarifies some of our confusion and better explains what this package is and how to get it. In addition to talking about all of the technical improvements in the PS5 version of Spider-Man, like quote-unquote ray-traced reflections and ambient shadows, and improved character and environment art, Insomniac confirms that a performance mode will be available that finally brings this beloved open-world action game to 60 frames per second. Interestingly, Spider-Man will load so quickly on PS5 that the funny interstitial subway scenes wouldn't even be needed to hide the load, but Insomniac confirms that you can actually turn those fast travel animations back on if you want to. And naturally, there will be exclusive DualSense features, new suits, and more. Now, there are two contentious items. The first is what we discussed last week. You can't buy this version of Spider-Man a la carte. The only way to receive access is to pre-order the Ultimate Edition of the PS5 launch game Spider-Man Miles Morales, also available simultaneously on PlayStation 4. PS5 players get it free outright, but if you upgrade from Miles Morales on PS4 to PS5, which is free, you have to pay an additional fee to get Spider-Man Remastered. The other perhaps stranger and more unexpected snag is that Insomniac has completely changed Peter Parker's facial actor in the PlayStation 5 version of the game. Here's what Stevenson says in part, quote, "In order to bring the best performances to players with our next-generation Marvel Spider-Man games, we have recast the face of Peter Parker. We loved working with John Bubniak, I guess that's how you say it, Bubniak, I don't know, on the original game. However, to get a better match to Peter Parker and Spider-Man actor Yuri Lowenthal's facial capture, we have cast Ben Jordan to be the face model for Peter Parker on the PS5 console," end quote. Naturally, such a decision has caused some backlash, which encouraged the game's creative director, Brian Inithar, to take to Twitter with a statement. He said, in part, today's news about the new Peter Parker face model has surprised some of you, and we at Insomniac totally understand your reaction. Heck, it even took me a while to get used to Peter's new look. But as we discussed the franchise's future and moving to PS5, it quickly became apparent that delivering even more believable looking characters made finding a better facial match for actor Yuri Lowenthal, who we all love as Peter, a necessity, end quote. The original PS4 Spider-Man launched in 2018 and is one of the console's biggest critical and commercial exclusives. Miles Morales is a smaller follow-up to the game, which is expected to be followed by a full-fledged Spider-Man 2. Chris, what do you think of all of that? There's a lot to cover there, but there's a lot of confusion. There's a different facial animation now, different character, basically. I find this whole situation peculiar. I'm curious to hear what your take is.
I beyond just like the weird availability of the game, which I think is a little bit double dippy and a little bit convoluted when it really doesn't need to be. That's almost like secondary to me, to the idea that they thought that the excuse that they gave for recasting Peter Parker was believable in any way. To get a better match for Yuri Lowenthal's voice, I feel like, don't you do that when you're making the game in the first place? Like, isn't that the whole thing? Like, that it wasn't like a criticism that I saw widely or at all that like, oh yeah, I like Peter Parker, but I don't know, his face and voice don't match. Like, that was never like a biting criticism of Spider-Man PS4. It wasn't like it wasn't even a common community complaint. There's no like grassroots hashtag about it. It's pretty clear to me that the guy who was the facial model probably wanted more money and they just didn't want to give it to him. So they just recast him because that's the only reason why you would do this. It's so arbitrary and bizarre and out of nowhere that it really is just like the Occam's razor situation where it's like there's no way that is more believable than that way to me.
Yeah, I don't really get it either. I'm not an expert in this stuff at all, but I was kind of wondering if it had anything to do with Sony and their kind of film acquisition or ownership over the Spider-Man IP, and then maybe them trying to get some sort of continuity for the next Spider-Man game that will somehow connect to the movie that's going to... I was like, I just didn't really understand it. You're right. Occam's razor does suggest the simplest explanation is the right one. Dustin, what are your thoughts on this entire clusterfuck of a situation?
So the only thing that I'm really curious about is that the voice actor posted a tweet. He retweeted Insomniac. So Insomniac said, our full reason is in the blog, but we had to recast as we needed a better match for facial capture to bring you next gen performances. And he retweeted and said, guys, it's my face's fault. The stupid bones in my face. Blame my bones. So, I mean, okay, I'm completely talking out my ass right now. So no one, fact check this, but is it possible that with the way they do face capture or something that they're trying to do a more advanced face capture and something about with the way that, because I'm assuming they capture the voice actor's face and then apply someone else's face to his voice, right?
Yeah. I mean, that's typically how it's either that or, there's, the voice actor does their thing and then, the actors lip sync to it. I've seen that done as well, but it's more likely, that they record the facial capture from the voice actor and kind of apply it to the facial model of whatever the facial actor or the body capture is.
Right. So, I mean, the only thing other than I think that Chris might be onto something with money. Of course, it's always money. But I think to give them the benefit of the doubt, maybe there is a technical aspect behind if they want to do better face capture, they need to find a better match. But I don't know if I would, if I'm even buying my own theory.
I just don't believe it. It's if that was the case, then why just Peter Parker, Well, why would it just be Peter Parker? Peter Parker was the only person that had a weird face. No, Peter Parker's top billing, and he's the character that probably felt like he could negotiate the hardest, and he tried, and he was like, well, now we could recast you anyway. And then they did it because the voice doesn't change. I really feel like that's just the simplest, because there's no way, I understand facial capture and animation's really hard, but I have never seen this excuse given. And anytime this usually does happen or anything like it does happen, it's usually for negotiation reasons. It's the same thing with what's his face? Who played War Machine in the first Iron Man? Oh my God, what's his name? He got replaced by freaking
is it Terrence Howard?
Terrence Howard, yeah. He wanted more money for Iron Man 2, and then they were like, no, we'll just cast you. What? No, we're not going to do that. And they just went along with it. They were just like, yeah, hey, this is him now. Don't think about it. And it was fine. And I feel like this is just typically, I feel like that's what's happening. Because otherwise, it's so weird. The premise of Peter Parker being the only person that would have complications with facial capture, even though in all likelihood throughout development he's probably the person they focused on the absolute most. I don't know. It's something stinks about it to me. It's not. It doesn't bother me really. It's okay, whatever. That's his new face. Weird. I'll get used to it, I guess. But the reason that they gave to me is just completely just nonsensical. I don't know. I don't have proof, obviously, but I have a hunch on this.
I wonder if I'm only thinking about this just to see if there's anything less sinister of a possibility. Is it because they were joking about the bones in the face and all that, but is it possible that when they captured all this stuff, they probably, I'm sure they did pickups well into 2018, but they might have filmed a lot of this stuff in 2015, 2016. And I wonder if they were we don't have the quality that we need to make the PS5 jump. So we might as well use that as an excuse to get rid of this guy. So maybe it's not money or anything like that. Maybe we can just kind of unify the two universes and get this much higher quality. I don't know. But a lot of people were writing into me about how, and Dustin will probably remember this one, Infamous 2, when they tried to change Cole and then they changed him back because people got so mad. And I was actually at the center of that. as people might remember.
Oh, really?
Greg, my co-host, was even more at the center of that. Yeah, we complained and bitched about that forever until they changed it. So, and then I think Greg was, doing a Comic-Con panel with them, and they showed him the picture for the first time of like going back to Cole, because if people go look at Cole in Infamous 2 originally, it was just a totally different man, but it was supposed to be the same character. And I'm like, I don't really buy. I liked our balding pattern Cole McGrath bike messenger personally, but that was just me. But we did get a letter from Peter Sismigu, which I think kind of asks an obvious question. He says, hey, CNC, with the whole issue regarding the decision to recast the face model for Peter Parker in the upcoming remastered version of Spider-Man on PS5, I find the statement of Insomniac's creative director very peculiar. Brian Inthiar says, quote, finding a better facial match for actor Yuri Lowenthal was a necessity, end quote, and that the decision was not taken lightly. I mean, wouldn't Yuri Lowenthal be the best facial match for Yuri Lowenthal? Instead, they just went with an actor that looks a bit too much like Tom Holland, but I'm sure that's just a coincidence. Keep making every day great again. The obvious answer to this is that Yuri Lowenthal is way too expensive, but it does kind of beg the question, like, why wouldn't you just go in that direction? If this game is so important that you unify everything, and it is important, it's one of PlayStation 4's biggest exclusives, the proper sequel is going to be huge on PlayStation 5. I think we all know that. So didn't they lose an opportunity here to maybe just unify these things completely? That's the thing that I'm a little confused by.
See, I would say that, Yuri Lowenthal looks too old. You know what I mean? Maybe he wouldn't pass for 26-year-old Peter Parker or however old he's supposed to be in that game. I'm pretty sure he's like 26 or I think. I might be misremembering that wrong.
No, I think you're right. It's about there, yeah.
He's definitely like mid to late 20s, I think, in Spider-Man PS4. And maybe they were like, oh, Yuri Lowenthal's face is probably like a little bit older. But what's confusing to me, especially like if you were trying to unify that and trying to like really get the message that, because they said this a lot when they were marketing for Spider-Man, they were like, oh, this is like a seasoned Spider-Man. This is like an older, more mature Spider-Man who's been through the ringer. So I thought it was kind of appropriate that they had a guy already that looked kind of older, but now they have this Tom Holland guy, this Tom Holland lookalike dude, who looks like he's 17, you know? Like it is weird. He looks significantly younger than he did before, and it's just even more confusing to me in that regard, because it's just, I don't know. I don't see a really good reason outside of, negotiating a contract that just didn't really work out for them to touch the face model of Peter Parker at all. This is like a really big game for PlayStation. Like you said, you'd think you'd want to change as little about it as possible. If you were trying to like remaster it and bring it to the next generation console, you just want to make it look better and shine better and like load faster and faster FPS and all that, to the point where like going in and redoing the face seems so unnecessary that it almost had to be something that they didn't necessarily plan to do.
Yeah, it's a weird move. I understand people's consternation about this. Someone, I think it was on PlayStation Blog in the comments, someone had written that Miles Morales now looks older than Peter Parker.
Yeah.
Which is true and weird. So there is that as well. But Dustin, I want to throw this next one over to you, because the other side of this question is what's going on with the game from a marketing and PR standpoint generally. Matthew O'Sullivan wrote into us on Patreon. He says, why are Sony being shitty about this whole Spider-Man upgrade? How much can they even stand to make versus the negative PR that they seem to just be generating for themselves at the moment? So Insomniac didn't really, they clarified it in terms of understanding it, but it is weird that they just aren't selling this game. It's not the first time that it's happened. I pointed out that South Park Stick of Truth was only available on PS4 for a long time, for years, if you pre-ordered Fractured But Whole. So it's not totally unheard of, but I don't understand why they just aren't keen on trying to sell this thing and at least, I don't know, making it some sort of logical and understandable way that you get it. Basically, here's what the thing, if you get the game Miles Morales on PS5, the Ultimate Edition, you get Spider-Man for free. If you get PS4 Miles Morales, you get the PS5 version of Miles Morales for free, but then you have to pay an upgrade fee to get Spider-Man Remastered. That's how I understand it. It doesn't make any sense. What do you think about the whole PR spin or lack thereof?
Yeah, this is an interesting one because it's it's a weird situation where when PS4 was launching and Xbox One was launching, there was this idea that Microsoft was making the anti-consumer moves as far as, the always online and stuff like that. And Sony was out punching with the very, at the time, I guess it's pro-consumer, but they were just keeping the status quo with, games being able to be shared on disk without any issues. And so it's interesting now seeing going into this next generation, not that I think that Sony is making moves quite as bad as Microsoft did last gen, but it's just completely the opposite of what Microsoft is doing. I mean, even in the fact, as far as Microsoft has currently said that their games are going to stay at $60, which obviously they're banking more on Game Pass more than anything. But it's weird to me that Sony wouldn't even just give people the option to buy it on their own. That's the thing that gets me the most. And I don't know if I said this last week, or it may have been on Maddie's show, that I'm willing to stand for the unpopular argument that some upgrades should cost money. They take a significant amount of dev time, not all the time, but sometimes. And so if there is a better product that costs money to make, then maybe it should be paid for. But to lock it exclusively behind the Ultimate Edition or the PS4 with the upgrade, it's just, I don't know. It's weird to me that they would double down on something like this.
It's also weird just because they're nickel and diming people and making this obfuscation of a situation where they own the game, and so any less money they earn from it, they're not splitting it with anyone. I'm not saying that they don't need all the revenue they can get, and like you said, these things are expensive. It seems like they did put a lot of time and money into making this new version of Spider-Man, but of course the question has to be asked, like, no one really asked for this version of Spider-Man either. It's not like we asked you to do this. So I understand making it a little perk, but maybe I think it would have been cool to be like, hey, it's $20. Miles Morales is 40. This is 20. You can get it 60, whatever the case might be. I thought that would be pretty cool, but
yeah.
Nonetheless, they just didn't. They haven't nailed it, and they haven't backtracked on it either. So we will find out more. Although I do want to acknowledge this letter from nlins27, who says, "Hi CNC. My question is mostly for Mr. Moriarty. Colin, you were very critical of Xbox using the smart delivery term at the start of the year, calling it nothing more than a marketing ploy and unnecessary, seeing as devs were doing this. But now that we've seen the way Sony is handling it with mass confusion over saves carrying over and charging people for an upscaled Spider-Man, was Xbox right to drum this out early on? I've been really impressed with how Xbox has delivered the message that every game I buy from them, I'll be able to play the best version for no extra cost. And have all my progress carry over. With Sony, I have no idea what I can and can't play on the PS5. Cheers for all you do, gents, and keep Fridays great." Thank you for the letter. You're absolutely right. I think that maybe I jumped the gun on this because at least we can understand what smart delivery is. It is just a marketing term, but we understand it and it works. Yeah. I don't know what the fuck Sony's even talking about with any of this stuff. Chris?
No, yeah, I agree. I think, and I think I made this argument back then where it's like, yeah, this might be it definitely is a marketing term. There's no denying that, but sometimes you need simplified language to explain these things, especially when you're in an environment where the things that we kind of assume are given aren't necessarily given. And back then there really was no expectation, at least on the PlayStation side, that there would be backwards compatibility because their track record on it has been so fraught with, miscalculation and under deliverance. I think they were smart to find a term for it. I think they were smart to have an identifiable kind of logo type thing on the front of every box that says oh yeah, hey, this will work with every single machine that you have, and it'll acclimate to whatever hardware that you're using it on. I think that was kind of smart, and I think we're seeing why that kind of messaging is important, and I think we're seeing why that messaging is important to get out of the way early on. If Microsoft had waited till now to explain what smart delivery was, I feel like there would be a problem. Very similar to this, but because they did it before really anything was tangibly announced or anything was really happening, I feel like people just sort of understand it better. And I don't know, this is all a very confusing way of doing this, and maybe Microsoft's way is not the best way to do it, wholesale entirely, but I definitely feel like it's better than whatever this is.
Yeah, I agree. We'll save some of the conversation about the saves and the cross-gen stuff for a little while later because we have more to say on that. But I agree with you. I think that the writer, the listener is right about me jumping the gun. I think maybe I was wrong about this because at least you just have some recognizable way to tell people how to play your games. I just don't know what Sony is doing. I have no idea what they're doing. As of the time we're recording this, October 1st at night, I have no idea.
Yeah. And we're a PlayStation podcast.
Yeah.
Like we dive into this shit weekly, twice. You know, like there's no reason why we shouldn't have any idea this close to the release of these machines how this stuff works.
And just to kind of draw the contrast, media and YouTubers and Twitch streamers and stuff, they have their Xbox Series X already. So not only have Microsoft now distributed these machines to influencers, but they're like ready to go. Like I think I've seen one picture of like that rapper had a PS5 or something, and that was like making the rounds, and that was basically it. Like no one has any idea what's going on with this machine. I'm excited about it, but I am not feeling confident right now that their ducks are in a row, and this is just one example of it. The other examples being the games that they just haven't talked about at all until recently, like Little Big Planet, Sackboy's Big Adventure, and whatever the what's that other game, the Destruction All Stars, which is a cool name, but it's all Destruction All Stars, by the way, I think is $70 or something like that. So it's like, Jesus fucking Christ. Okay. So we'll talk more about all that stuff in a little while, some of the game save stuff. In the meantime, I want to go to another story, number 2. A recent report from Bloomberg indicates that publisher and developer CD Projekt is instituting a round of crunch on its team members leading up to the November release date of its eagerly anticipated RPG, Cyberpunk 2077. The story from Jason Schreier is flimsy at best, however, merely claiming that the team will be working for 1 extra day a week for 6 weeks and that they will be compensated for all of the extra time. In an email leaked to Bloomberg, the head of the studio, Adam Badowski, said in part, quote, "Starting today, the entire studio is in overdrive," end quote. The game has entered certification and now appears that the team is working on squashing bugs and structuring a day 1 patch. Any consternation about this move seems to stem, at least in part, from previous promises Badowski made not to force overtime on his team, but clearly such a proclamation was unworkable. Badowski wrote in part, quote, "I take it upon myself to receive the full backlash for the decision. I know this is in direct opposition to what we've said about crunch. It's also in direct opposition to what I personally grew to believe a while back, that crunch should never be the answer. But we've extended all other possible means of navigating the situation," end quote. Once word leaked from his studio, Badowski wrote a brief statement on Twitter reading, quote, "These last 6 weeks are our final sprint on a project we've all spent much of our lives on, something we care for deeply. The majority of the team understands that push, especially in light of the fact that we've just sent the game to cert, and every day brings us visibly closer to shipping a game we want to be proud of. This is one of the hardest decisions I've had to make, but everyone is well compensated for every extra hour they put in, and like in recent years, 10% of the annual profit of our company generates in 2020 will be split directly among the team," end quote. Considering CD Projekt employs roughly 1,000 people and is expected to generate an insane $500 million in profit in its fiscal year, the average bonus per person could reach $50,000 per year per person. Website Glassdoor indicates that salaries at CD Projekt range from $70,000 USD a year to 6 figures. The per capita income in Poland, where CD Projekt is headquartered and where a vast majority of its employees work, is $5,600 a year. So I just tweeted out about this because I was doing a little bit of research before we recorded. So I broke it down like this. CD Projekt is forecast to net $500 million in profit. That's net income, not gross income. That information comes from Jason Schreier's article on Bloomberg. They also say they give 10% of their net profit to their employees as bonuses. They employ roughly 1,000 people. So the average bonus would be $50,000 a person. And the median per capita income of Poland, like I said, is about $5,500. Now, if you go to World Population Review online, you can see breakdowns of how Poland performs against all other countries in terms of median household income, which is the income of your house. And then, of course, median per capita income, which is basically the population's overall income divided by the population itself. So in the United States, our median household income is $43,500 and our median per capita income is $15,100. In a place like the UK, it's $31,000 USD per median household income, $12,500 per person. So again, in Poland, the per capita household income is $15,338 And some websites show it from between $4,500 to $5,500. And if you do GDP per capita in 2019 for households, $15,595 in Poland last year. So I'm not saying that everyone's going to make $50,000. That's just a crude mathematical equation. But what I'm saying is that the average worker, the average person in Poland is pulling in about $5,000 USD. And the average person at CD Projekt, should bonuses be distributed somewhat evenly between all their employees, will be 10 times the amount of per capita income of their fellow countrymen. And we're expected, by the way, based on this piece of just activist journalism, to be aghast at this situation. And I do not get it. I do not understand it. I think it's tone deaf. I think it's ridiculous. I don't think Jason should have written this story. I think it's a desperate sort of story with seemingly one or two sources. Doesn't seem like anyone that works at CD Projekt is even upset about this. Why would you be upset about this when you're going to make all of this extra money? I have a lot more to say about this, but I want to kick it over to you guys. Dustin, we'll start with you. What did you think about this story overall, the way it was received, the way it was put out there, and the way people responded to it?
The devil's advocate, of course, is just that even despite the money, there is a human cost. But in this situation, to me, I just feel like so it's 6 weeks until the game comes out at this point. So we're talking 6 extra work days. I feel like this isn't really an insane amount extra to be working. And I don't know, I guess in my mind, which I've never been a game developer, so, maybe I'm totally off base here, but when you get that close to launch, that's just kind of what happens, to my understanding, is that you shouldn't plan on being able to go on weekend trips or go on vacation or something like that around this time. This is the most critical time for the game. Often we hear stories about how a game can come together in the final few months, even few weeks. So yeah, the compound, as far as like the limited amount of time that's being asked for in combination with the overall amount of money and the fact that this is pretty status quo, I'm pretty much in agreement with you.
Chris, what do you think about the whole situation here surrounding CD Projekt and this Bloomberg article?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I feel like because it is paid work and, they're not getting shafted and they stand to gain a lot, it doesn't bother me necessarily. But I would say that the idea that they've exhausted all other options is kind of silly, because they've delayed this game 5,000 times. They could easily just delay it again and really not stand to lose much of anything, because it is probably the most overhyped game of the generation, if The Last of Us isn't included, probably. It's got a lot of word of mouth. It's going to be available on every platform. They don't really stand to lose a lot, I don't think, if they pushed it, even just a very small amount later. So that's really the only issue that I have with it. It's like, listen, just say like, hey man, we really want to hit this launch and we're going to have to work for it. And I feel like I would be like more okay, but like just the idea that like, oh, there's no other way. It's like, well, no. I mean, clearly you've not been shy about delaying this in the past when you needed more time. If you need more time, then just get yourself more time. Is what I would say.
Yeah, they could have done this. I think I'm a little more sympathetic for multiple reasons to CD Projekt's plight. First of all, they're publishing this game themselves. Right. So they can't put the financial onus on an outside party. That every day this game doesn't come out, they're eating it. They are eating it. They don't have to go to WB or someone else like they did with The Witcher and be like, well, it's your money. I mean, it's their money. And to your point, I think maybe an honest answer from them would have been like, listen, we're going to make all of this money on this game. From what I've read, they've spent about $130 million on this game so far, which is a high budget, especially in Eastern Europe. But like the Bloomberg article says, they're about to net, not gross, but net $500 million in their fiscal year, which is an outrageous amount of money.
Yeah.
So to me, I agree with you in the sense that they should, Adam Badowski and the leadership should have gone to them, the studio, and been like, listen. And I do hear this where people are like, they did promise that they would not do this to their staff. Yeah. And I get that. But what they should have been is like, listen, this year has been fucking nuts. we can't delay this game again, because if, to your point, if they delay the game a week, they release the game basically on Thanksgiving, right? And then you're in Black Friday, and then you're in. I think they realize, and I think anyone really realizes that if they delay the game again, they're going to have to delay it to January or February. They can't just delay it a week or two, because then no one releases AAA games in that time period. They're not going to be considered for Game of the Year. There's a lot of really huge implications for not releasing the game. And I think that they should have been like, listen, we're going to split a ton of this money with you. So the more money we make, the quicker we make it, and the less we have to spend, the more we're all going to get. And so I agree with you. Maybe just talking more like an adult to everyone would have been nice, but I'm sure they also didn't expect this to get leaked, or maybe they did. I don't know. But the people that work at CD Projekt, and I don't mean to disparage anyone and how hard they work, of course, at any of these different places, but they're amongst Poland's most fortunate and highest earning citizens in the country of 50 million people. I mean, if you work at a game developer making that kind of money in Krakow or in Warsaw or whatever, it's a serious amount of loot, and it's not a joke. And this reminds me too of, well, there's two different things. One is, you don't really see anyone at CD Projekt complaining about this. In fact, they're probably being like, could everyone just shut the fuck up? Like, look at all the money we're about to make. We're about to put our name on this game. We're about to have this on our resume forever. We're about to get this massive bonus. We're already paid significantly more than the average Polish worker, both urban and suburban and rural, especially in Poland, workers. So I feel like they want to be like, just shut the fuck up. But it also reminds me of situations we've seen most recently at Rocksteady, but before that at Rockstar, where you hear these stories from a few people that are slanting it, and then the people that work there come out and say, like, this isn't really what's happening actually here. We're not mad about the situation. We saw that with the Rocksteady female situation that happened a few weeks ago, and during the Rockstar fiasco of with Red Dead Redemption in 2018 and 2019. By the way, that game made billions of dollars, and people made 5 and 6 figure bonuses on that game for that year, by the way. Most of these people just want to be like, shut the fuck up and let us make our money. We understand what this makes, or what this takes to make this game. Mm-hmm. It seems like activist journalists, frankly, like Jason Schreier, want to come in and spin and weave a tale. And it's flimsy, and I think most people can see through it. Not all cases of crunch are created equal. And I think a lot of normal people read this stuff, work normal jobs, are stressed out about real life things, and are like, what the hell are you even talking about? I just got back from working 16 hours in a warehouse with a surgical mask over my face, and I'm reading about how these developers have to work 6 extra days to earn their average $50,000 bonuses. Give me a break. You know, that's why I feel like the calamity chasing is too much, and I think it diminishes a lot of the real stuff that happens in the industry that should be taken care of. But most of these quote unquote calamities are not calamities at all. No one is a slave. Just don't work there. If you don't want to work at CD Projekt in Poland, don't work there. I mean, it's pretty much that simple. You're probably not going to find a better job in that country if you're in tech, but they're one of the biggest and most profitable employers in the entire country. It's just a weird one. Don't you think, Dustin, that it's weird that we focus so much on these perceived negatives as opposed to the real negatives, and then everything gets buried, and then people just kind of entrench themselves in these situations where they won't correct themselves? Jason Schreier's reporting is not good. It's not just because Jason Schreier puts out a lot of good reporting, and we're always going to talk about the things he reports on as they're relevant to our show, doesn't mean everything he says is relevant or needs to be published. And that is my problem.
Right. Yeah. And what's interesting to me, I know that like here where I live in a steel town where a huge population of, or not the population, but many people in my community work at a steel mill. And I guess I don't want to say like, oh, well, this is the normal for everyone, so, you know, it's okay to be working like crazy. But it's just the reality that, like, yeah, people around here work 6 day weeks all the time. They're working doubles because someone else bailed on them. And yeah, they're paid very well for it. And they also get profit sharing and stuff like that. And most of them are very pleased to put in that hard day's work to do that. So, and yeah, I'm with you that there's other options out there. And I think what's interesting, I guess that what I want to ask you is that we haven't heard anyone from CD Projekt complain about this, but would we even hear that Like, are they even able to voice like, yeah, this really sucks? Like, would they even do that on Twitter or something?
No, I think you would just find. No, I don't think that. I think that you would find that they would be talking to journalists more.
Right.
I think there would
That
be
makes
breathless.
sense.
There would be breathless follow-ups. People used to talk to me about all sorts of shit all the time when I used to write those kinds of stories. And the flip side of that, Dustin, to me is when employees are encouraged to come and speak out, they're just ignored or ridiculed. And that's what happened with Rockstar. Remember when Rockstar was like, we encourage anyone that likes working here to say what they want to say to anyone they want. And then a bunch of people came out and everyone's like, look at these shills. I mean, they don't represent it. And it's like, but these are the people that work there. They're putting their names on it. They're not anonymous sources. And then with the female situation with Rocksteady that happened a couple of months ago, where they were saying that the situation is misogynistic or whatever. And then the women that work there came out and were like, this isn't true. I mean, this isn't a reflection of the studio at all. So I just feel like a lot of this is driven by journalists. And I don't understand why, except for to grind a political axe, which is why I feel like it's so destructive, because it's detached from the reality of making games. And I was so surprised. Jason Schreier is a smart guy. He understands the industry. Maybe he doesn't understand it as well as I thought he did, though, because you would think that it would come up more that this is a self-published, self-funded game, that they are burning their own money by keeping the game longer, that they can't reasonably release it in December for a whole bunch of reasons, that it would cost the studio tens of millions of dollars to hold the game just so they can patch it and so people don't have to work Saturdays for a few weeks. I mean, it's kind of ridiculous. And the next point, I'm a little breathless right now, but the next point that I wanted to get to, Will Selfridge wrote into us about. He says, hey, boys, don't know if you want to go down the crunch rabbit hole again. I do. He says, but why do the games press make a big deal about crunch? There is crunch, as Dustin said, in almost every job I can think of. I'm a law student, and damn, do I know I'll be working long fuck hours to get the best results for my future clients, assuming I pass the bar one day. Why do we treat devs as if they have no personal agency? If someone at CD Projekt Red doesn't want a crunch, then maybe they should change jobs or do something about it. That should be it. Trust me, I wrote a law paper on it. So anyhow, thanks, boys. Love the podcast and keep on keeping on. I agree with Will, and this is what I was saying before. I think normal people in any field read this and are like, you got to be kidding me. First of all, in creative fields, we all work in creative fields. Nothing happens in clean 9 to 5 hours. I don't know anyone in the video game industry that works 9 to 5. Anyone. Now, I've never met that person. I don't know who that person is. If that person exists, they're probably not that passionate. And I think the other part of it, to be perfectly honest, is that if they all work hard as a team, they're just going to make more money together. And that does benefit them, not only with their bonuses, but also with the kind of the je ne sais quoi of the studio, right? Like, you're making big money, you're making big games. It's exciting. You can attract more talent. You can get better buildings. You can pay your people better. You can have better amenities and better perks and better insurance or whatever the case might be. It's all upside. I don't understand why hard work is so disparaged, as if you should just clock in and out and make a video game in 40 hours a week. It doesn't work like that. And I know that it's not like something I make games now. I'm not making games like that are anywhere on the level of a AAA game, but we're a 2-person studio. We work really hard to make the games we make, and it's not possible to do it in normal hours, which is why I email Barry at like 3 a.m. all the time. So it's just frustrating to me. And I don't know what the answer to this is. I don't know what we do other than talking about it. And I don't want to ignore this situation. Jason obviously has it out for me. I mean, he went at me on Twitter over this, but we're not going to stop reporting on the things that people say because it's relevant to the audience. So of course we're going to talk about this, but on a more positive note, Connor Johnson wrote into us and said, hey guys, regarding the launch lineup for both consoles, are either of you considering Cyberpunk 2077 as essentially a launch game? CD Projekt Red themselves have even said it's basically a launch game, and since we know there's a next-gen patch for PS5 coming before the official PS5 release next year, wouldn't you agree that Cyberpunk launching a week before the console's release makes a day one or a week one purchase more attractive? To me, it boosts the PS5 launch lineup significantly. What do you think? So the game comes out on November 19th, so it's after PS5 comes out. You might be in Europe, so it's going to come out the same day there. I am kind of looking at this as a launch game, although I have to be honest, and I think Chris was kind of speaking to this, so I'll kick it over to you, Chris. I'm not that excited about this game. I don't know. I'm just not. I've never really been looking forward to this game as much as I feel like everyone else has been.
It's a game that definitely looks like it's probably going to be amazing. It's probably going to be a benchmark game that a lot of people pay attention to, and a lot of people are. I have no doubt in my mind that it's probably going to get really good reviews, because it just looks like they've worked really hard on it. The quality seems super high, but it also looks like a game that it looks like a very overwhelming game to me. Like it looks like a game that I worry about whether or not I'll even have the time or patience to really sink my teeth into, because RPGs really kind of live and die on how invested you can get into them. And I think I'm at a point, especially just like with this year and just how much shit I have to do, where it's like, man, I don't know. I don't know if I'll really be in a good headspace to really give this game a shot for a while. It's why I'm excited for Crash, and why I've been so into Tony Hawk, is just because they are those games where it's just, oh yeah, you can play them and it doesn't take a lot out of you. But I feel like this is a game I'm gonna have to play with the lights shut off. I'm gonna have to like put my phone like on silent. I'm not gonna be able to like, you know what I mean? It feels feels like a game that you're really gonna have to immerse yourself in to really get the full experience of. And I don't know if I'll be able to really do that around the time it launches, because it's going to be surrounded by so many other things. You know, it's competing with a lot in November. So this might be a game that I have to wait to get to, really.
Yeah, I don't think I'm going to get to it until next year. I'll play it for sure, but I want to play Spider-Man on PS5, Miles Morales, Demon's Souls. I want to play Sackboy's Big Adventure, which actually looks pretty good now that we've finally seen what it looks like. So there are a lot of other games that I want to check out. Dustin, are you into Cyberpunk? I don't really know this about you, to be honest.
Yeah, so I mean, I've seen the deep dive stuff that they've put out, and it looks great to me. And honestly, I was sold at that. And so I've just kind of been like, they've been doing the Night City Wire stuff, and I haven't watched any of those just because at this point I'm in. Like, I want to play the game. I'm specifically excited to play this on PC, just because of all the different ray tracing, and I have the new graphics card coming. And so for me, it's like, I'm excited, but I'm not like frothing excited, because I've just kind of been tuning it out. And when it's here, it's here. And yeah, I mean, I'm sure it'll be a fantastic game. If I'm being 100% honest with the audience, I think that CD Projekt Red is probably a little bit overhyped as a studio. I think they're fantastic and one of the best, but Witcher 3, at least to me, is not quite as good as everyone else says. But that's okay. You know, if you think it's awesome, you know, you don't need to come after me. But either way, I think this game has a lot of promise. I mean, any game that's in development for this long, at least is hopefully at least good. So,
well, yeah, not always the case when a game lasts this long in development, but
right.
But it's clear that this game is going to be great. I don't know. I think it's just coming out at a bad time for me. I might even wait until it comes to PS5 natively, but we'll have more to say about that in November. Let's move on to number 3. October's free PlayStation Plus games have been revealed, and by the time you hear this, they may be already available. From October 6th until November 2nd, you can get the following 2 games for free on PlayStation 4, so long as you have an active PlayStation Plus account. The racing game Need for Speed Payback and the RPG Vampire. Need for Speed Payback launched back in 2017 and was developed by Ghost Games, the EA-owned team behind other Need for Speed games, including Rivals and Heat, and the studio recently reorganized under the name EA Gothenburg. Vampire, and that's Vampyr on the other hand, came to PS4 in 2018 and was developed by Don't Nod, the studio best known for its Life is Strange adventure games. It was published by Focus Home Interactive, which more recently published other niche hits like Greedfall, The Surge, and A Plague Tale. So this is a pretty good lineup. What do you guys think? Chris, are you interested in either of these games? It's funny because Vampire is a game I've been meaning to buy forever, and now I don't have to.
Yeah, I don't think any of these really speak to me. I know I was curious about The Surge a while back because I had heard good things about it, so I might jump into that. But I mean, as far as like, you know, I know that's not on the docket really, but like it reminded me of The Surge, and I was like, oh yeah, I should probably, because I have it. I don't know why I haven't played it yet. I feel like I have so many freaking games that I haven't played. Goddamn. But Yeah, I don't know. I've just never really been into Need for Speed. You know, I feel like I feel like Burnout was really like the point where I was like, oh, I really like these games. I like games with cars and when they go fast. And then I played like, you know, all the other I played like Project Gotham Racing and like Forza and Gran Turismo and all these and like Need for Speed and just like you know, this ain't Burnout. So I just sort of fell off it.
Sorry, Dustin, are you interested in either of these games by chance?
I'm a little bit interested in Vampire just because I've heard good things about it. This Need for Speed one, though, is interesting because it's, to my understanding, this is not one of the Needs for Speed games that people look favorably on. Like, I'm looking at opencritic.com right now. It has a 60% average. And the three main takeaways are unremarkable open world, vile gambling systems, and throwaway characters.
That's fun.
So,
nice.
Yeah, I'm curious if these are like specifically when it comes to the gambling systems, if this is something that maybe they've fixed due to, you know, obviously a 60% average, but who knows? So yeah, maybe go into that one with a little bit of caution.
Little bit of trepidation. Sure. Yeah, it's been 3 years since that came out, so I'm sure that they've hopefully fixed it. And it's worth noting, and what I was going to say to Chris is that Ghost Games, as I said, they've been rebranded as EA Gothenburg. They've basically been taken away from Need for Speed and are basically doing Raven-like support duty on other titles now. So I don't know if that has to do with their performance over time or what, because they actually did the Need for Speed. Remember when they made Need for Speed, like just a game called Need for Speed again?
Yeah.
They did that one as well.
Was that the one that coincided with that weird movie with Aaron Paul?
Yeah, the movie. Yes, exactly. All right, so those games are available as of October 6th. I definitely am going to check out Vampire. I doubt I'll play Need for Speed. Number 4, the furor over the upcoming Harry Potter RPG Hogwarts Legacy and its connection to the IP's creator, JK Rowling, continues. JK Rowling has in more recent years come under fire for comments that some people deem transphobic. And since she is a notoriously hands-on creative who outright owns the Harry Potter license, it has raised some question marks about any associated work moving forward for people who don't want to support her. This has naturally created a headache for Hogwarts Legacy's publisher, WB Interactive, as well as the studio making the game, Avalanche Software. Last week, the game's website declared Rowling uninvolved in the project, and now, in a company Q&A session as relayed by website Video Game Chronicle, the president of Warner's gaming vertical, David Haddad, told his employees the following in part, quote, "While J.K. Rowling is the creator of Harry Potter and we are bringing that to life with the power of Portkey, in many places she's a private citizen also, and that means she's entitled to express her personal opinion on social media. I may not agree with her and I might not agree with her stance on a range of topics, but I can agree that she has a right to hold her opinions," end quote. The Portkey mentioned in Haddad's statement is a reference to Portkey Games, an internal label that WB Interactive owns that deals with the external developers making Harry Potter games. Avalanche is the first internal team to make a Harry Potter game under Portkey, and it was previously best known in its Disney years for its licensed games, including Disney Infinity. So this saga kind of continues. I wanted to just I don't know that I have much more to say about it, but I wanted to have that update out there. So, Chris, I want to kick it over to you to discuss this. I'm wondering, since Dustin and I were able to talk about it last week, do you have anything to say about this kind of ongoing saga with Rowling? I'm not saying you need to get into the politics, but just kind of separating or not separating her from the game, the product, and kind of enriching her further. She's already a billionaire. I don't know how much more you can really enrich her. But it seems like people really want to have their cake and eat it too with the situation. And my whole take is, they're lying to you. J.K. Rowling is heavily involved in everything Harry Potter. That is a notorious fact about her over the last 25 years.
Yeah.
And so she might not be in Utah working on the game at Avalanche, but she certainly knows what's going on. But I also feel like this is a really interesting example of people at companies trying to manipulate the products that they work on to kind of portray whatever political grievance they want to grind at the time. And I don't know if you guys saw more recently, there's a cryptocurrency company called Coinbase. Did you guys read about these guys in recent days? Basically, they released a statement saying that their people are not, they don't want to be political. They have nothing political to say. No one's going to be political on their dime or whatever, and so on and so forth. And that basically they only owe anything to their customers and to their investors. And I thought that was a pretty bold statement in a universe right now, in a world where everyone wants to be political and politicize everything. And I'm wondering if you have any feelings about the Rowling situation with Avalanche and with WBI.
Yeah, I don't know. It's hard because I really haven't looked into anything that JK Rowling has said or really any of it, because I don't know if I care about Harry Potter at all. I don't know if I care about JK Rowling at all. I would say that if I was looking forward to a Harry Potter game, I don't know if I would care necessarily if JK Rowling was still involved, because any amount of money that I'm going to her is that I'm going to be giving to this game that would presumably go to her is so negligible compared to the amount that she already owns that I almost feel like it hurts me more to not potentially enjoy something that I might enjoy than it helps her in any way, because she's already earned, like, she wouldn't notice. This game could not exist, and she would not be any worse for it. On the flip side, I also understand that, you know, you can have your own personal opinions, but also, like, you know, if you're in charge of, like, this property, maybe you should be a little bit careful about how you go about, like, if you have this many eyes on you, maybe you would want to pay a little bit more attention to what you say and how you say it. I would say that if JK Rowling would like me to defend her, I'll give her my wire transfer information and maybe we could work something out.
Sure.
But until then, I really don't care.
Yeah, well, I'm not a Harry Potter fan, but I care only. First of all, I think the game actually looks really good. I want to play it, to be honest, but I feel bad for people at Avalanche. I know that.
Yeah. They got the short end of the stick, I feel like.
Yeah, they have to kind of deal with this. It kind of sucks. Now, Avalanche is located in Utah. Utah is a notorious, one of the most conservative places in the United States. So they probably have a more conservative group of people working on this game than maybe the average studio would. But nonetheless, so the thing with JK Rowling, and people can read about her and her comments, is I don't know that what she said is transphobic. And people can obviously make that decision for themselves. The way I've described it to people is she's definitely expressed what I would maybe term trans skepticism, which I can understand why that would upset people. But I think that we use this word phobia too much. You're transphobic, you're homophobic. You know, it's like, I don't know about that.
I think so too. I think it's a misappropriation of the word phobia in a lot of ways. But I would say that I don't know if it's necessarily just her comments from you know, years or months prior. I think recently she wrote this, and I don't know if this is even true, but I heard that this happened, that she wrote this like book, this like novel about like a trans murderer or something, or like something really weird that like in tandem, like had it been released without these statements prior, might look different than them in tandem. You know what I mean?
Sure. I think, yeah, so that is true. So the book you're talking about is called Troubled Blood, which just came out recently. So there's a series of crime novels called Cormoran Strike, I think, that she wrote, or like the detective's name is Cormoran Strike, that she wrote under a pseudonym called Robert Galbraith.
Yeah.
And the first book came out in 2013, and I think she kept the secret for a while, and then someone blew her up, and she didn't want anyone to know that she wrote this. And I think so the murderer, I guess, in the book is trans or something, and so people are reading into that. I don't know the full extent of that because I've not read the books. But also, I think people have a problem. So I think the Robert Galbraith pen name is also a reference to something that people are really skeptical about as well. I don't know the full story about that. So there is something to investigate here. Yeah. I don't know exactly what it is, but I've read a lot of what she's written about this subject, and I didn't walk away from it personally thinking that she was anything but pro-trans. I think she's just pro-woman, and those things should be hand in hand. So it's up for people to kind of determine that, but a lot of people do have a problem with the things she's been saying, and this has actually been affecting her publishing too, because she's so powerful that her publisher is never going to get rid of her. But authors that are were on her label have left because of her comments, and people have quit the publishing house as well over her comments. So there is a little bit of smoke there. I don't know if there's fire. It often indicates that there is, but I wanted to bring that up nonetheless. Hopefully we can not talk about this game again until we actually see more of it next year.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on to number 5. There's some Resident Evil news to discuss. One piece of news about the upcoming Netflix show, another about the upcoming game Resident Evil Village. Let's get the good news out of the way first. Netflix has officially revealed its already teased Resident Evil show, which it's calling Infinite Darkness. The reveal happened at Tokyo Game Show late last month. When we first discussed the show weeks ago, we were left with some details to speculate over, but now we have a full write-up from Netflix about what the show actually is. Here's what their blurb says in part, quote, Resident Evil Infinite Darkness is scheduled for a global launch in 2021 exclusively on Netflix. 3 years after 2017's CG film Resident Evil Vendetta, technology has further evolved, creating the groundwork for a new series in unprecedented full 3D CG animation. Since the first game was released in 1996 on Sony PlayStation, the Resident Evil series is nearing its 25th anniversary. With the series continuing to evolve even now, a new title carves itself into the series' history. This new series will be produced and supervised by Capcom's Hiroyuki Kobayashi, who is responsible for bringing numerous titles in the Resident Evil series into existence. And then there's a little ellipsis. This will be a horror action series based around the stories of the two popular characters, Leon S. Kennedy and Claire Redfield. By adding suspense into dynamic action scenes, the series will reveal a Resident Evil world unlike anything seen before. End quote. The bad news, however, has to do with Resident Evil Village, at least if you wanted it to be truly next-gen. It appears publisher Capcom is investigating bringing the title to current-gen platforms too. Word comes by way of a quote from a TGS livestream for the game, a quote from which has been relayed by website Push Square. While Resident Evil Village is being developed specifically for next-generation consoles and PC, we're looking into delivering the experience on PlayStation 4 and Xbox One as well. We're looking into it, but we can't make any promises. However, we will do our best creating a top-tier experience on current-generation consoles, end quote. Village, which is essentially Resident Evil 8, was revealed earlier this summer and is due to come to PS5 in 2021. So there are a few things to talk about here, Chris. I want to throw it to you first. Does this show do anything for you? Because I know that you kind of duck in and out of some of these. We've talked about The Witcher in the past, etc. Some of these shows or whatever. Does this have this Infinite Darkness? Does this draw you to want to watch a Resident Evil show, like a drama?
I'll be curious about it enough to probably check it out. I think I'll gauge my opinions more when I see like a trailer and like actually see what the show looks like. I would say that them saying this is a Resident Evil world like you've never seen before is a little concerning, because that's kind of not what I don't know. Like I feel like the opposite is what you'd want. You know what I mean? Like, oh hey, yeah, give me the tone of Resident Evil in a show, but like this almost sounds like it's gonna be like, honey, I don't even know, like Antiques Roadshow. You know, like it's just going to be completely like just like a side swipe of just like, what the fuck? But I don't know. I'll give it a shot. I'm definitely curious about it, especially after The Witcher and Castlevania have done really well. I think there's a potential renaissance for transmedia as far as like video games offshooting into television, specifically television, because I think that's the best medium for it to jump to. But I gotta be real. I think to me, yeah, just the idea that it's not like anything we've seen before is a red flag to me. And also the name Infinite Darkness is kind of,
yeah, that name sucks.
Yeah, it's very generic. I don't think it sounds particularly interesting just on its face. So what you described as the good news, I kind of feel like is the bad news. And the good news to me is actually that it's going to be available everywhere on PS4 and Xbox One. I feel like next generation is really cool, and I feel like there's a lot of stuff you could do, especially in horror. But I can't think of a next gen benefit that could be really transformative enough to Resident Evil as a series that would warrant it being kind of locked onto a new machine. You know, I don't really see, especially because the series is so storied with its clever use of, you know, load screens, which presumably won't be a real issue now, and just kind of the way it uses the limitations of hardware to kind of make something scary. I almost feel like there's nothing really that they could do that would justify it being stuck on new hardware unless they just straight up couldn't get the resolution or frame rate to run at a reasonable or acceptable rate. So to me, it's totally fine and totally good news that they're trying to make this available to as many people as possible, even with it launching in 2021.
Dustin, what say you about this Netflix series and the game maybe being cross-gen?
I don't have a lot to say as far as the Netflix series. Like, I watched the trailer today, and it was funny because it kind of reminded me of like Final Fantasy. What was the movie called?
Spirits Within.
Yeah. What's interesting, I went and I watched a part of Spirits Within because I was like, oh, this kind of looks like that, and wow, that Final Fantasy movie looks really dated now. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's interesting. Obviously, Netflix has had a lot of success with branching out and doing game-related stuff, so I think this just makes sense. As far as the game coming to PlayStation 4 and Xbox One, to me, I'm not personally too concerned that we would get a lesser experience because of this. To me, based on those comments, they're building the game for PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X and S, but they're seeing that there's a possibility that they could downspec it to the current generation. And we've seen things like this happen before, and maybe this isn't a great one-to-one, but you have games like Doom from 2016 that they downspec'd and put on the Switch. So downspecking games to release on lesser consoles or lesser powerful consoles is totally a normal thing that happens in this industry. So yeah, I wouldn't be worried that we're going to get a lesser Resident Evil because of this.
Yeah, I don't have much to say about the Resident Evil show either. I'll keep an open mind for it, but I gotta say, I disagree with you guys fundamentally about this Resident Evil 8 thing. When are they going to start justifying these new consoles? Like, we've never had a cross-gen Resident Evil game, first of all, and there is a mainline one anyway. Games have been ported, of course, but I feel like it's ultimately not up to Capcom to justify the machines. But
that's Sony's responsibility to justify it. I feel like this is more of a criticism that should be levied against maybe Sony's first party if they're going to be doing stuff like this. But Capcom, as far as they're concerned, it's like, well, these machines are, the only real difference between them is the SSD and the resolutions that they can run at. So it'd be kind of silly to just alienate this entire platform that is like over 100 million strong just because these new machines are out and can run it better. Why not just offer a polished, higher quality, more luxury experience to people who have bought into the next generation and still allow people to kind of enter in on the low end. It'd be kind of, I just feel like we're in a generation now where PCs and consoles are so similar that, like, unless you had a really good reason where, like, the games just are fundamentally based on the SSD and they just can't work on previous generation hardware, I feel like people are going to look at that and say, at a move where they make things exclusive to the new generation, and they're going to see, like, well, my PC games aren't, locked to the graphics card that I have. Like there's no real reason to lock it unless it's just fundamentally impossible. And it's Sony's responsibility, really, at the end of the day, to really justify these things.
But aren't we hoping? I mean, I understand. I think you're right. I think the order of operations there is right. But certainly we should want Resident Evil 8 to be a PS5 game, right? I mean, why wouldn't we want that? Why wouldn't we want the Resident Evil 8 to be a game that cannot run on PS4?
I think in the way that it would run on PS5, I think it is. I think it would be. I think you're probably going to be getting something like 4K 60, no load times, like all these insane benefits, and fundamentally, like, you are getting something that can't run on PS4, but you're not necessarily asking. I feel like when you ask that question, it's not necessarily that you're asking for something to take advantage of all of the hardware. It seems more like why should they try and make it work for everybody if they don't absolutely have to? You know what I mean? Like,
sure.
I don't know. Like, it seems like there's so many PlayStations out in the wild already. And I'm sure Capcom is looking at that, and games are going to get more expensive and way harder to make, especially now when people are like looking at every single granular pixel and they're like looking, oh, like how does this run in 4K? Oh, how does this run at 60 frames per second? It's going to take a lot of resources and a lot of manpower and a lot of dev time to get the shit working, and it's going to be expensive, and I feel like it's going to require, at least for a little while, these pieces of software to be available in as many places as they can conceivably get them. And I think we'll probably start seeing stuff that's exclusive and very reliant on the new hardware pretty soon. I think Ratchet & Clank is one of those games that I'm not really convinced that that's capable of running on PS4 at all, given the way that they've loaded in environments in the demos that they've showed. But I do think it's going to be a slower transition this generation than previous, because people are less willing to give up their hardware, especially when PC is such an inviting ecosystem now compared to how it used to be.
What do you think about that, Dustin?
Yeah, I mean, it comes back to a lot of the fact too that this game, I mean, if they're developing it for PC as well, and so they already are developing it for a wide range of PC hardware, and not that it's 1-to-1, but I mean, as these consoles become more PC like, then like I said earlier, I think that they're building it for next gen, and that they're looking at the potential of down-speccing it to the previous gen. They have to design it in a way that can range anyway, and not just for a next-gen PS5 type experience.
Yeah, I think it's a compelling argument that since the PS4 and Xbox One generation and kind of the unified architecture, that it should be easier to scale these games. And maybe it's a little bit of a weird, well, I don't want to say it's weird, but I just feel like I want this thing to be justified, this new machine. Otherwise, like there are just not many games that are on PS5 where I'm like, I don't know. If you're having a hard time justifying it to me, then how is it playing out to the average person out there?
Yeah, no, I totally, I understand what the thought process is. Like we talked about it last time, where it's like there really is there's no big reason to jump out and get these things unless you just want the new machine and you want the new bit of kit. You know, that there's really very little justification for getting these things. And that's a stark contrast to, or not necessarily a stark contrast to how things usually have been in the past, but it's definitely a little bit less exciting than things have been in the past because of that. But I also do think that because of the low availability and because of the situation that most people are in this year, I feel like maybe I feel like Microsoft and Sony kind of expect this generation to sell kind of softly in the beginning anyway. You know, I think they kind of anticipate a slow transition over to new hardware in the same way that you see it happening in the PC space, in the same way that you have it happening in the mobile phone space. I feel like they're both prepared for that, and I feel like maybe that's why there's no real heavy push for something. And even when Microsoft did have a heavy push for something where they were going to launch with Halo, which I think would have been really ideal for them, because I mean, between, you know, Spider-Man and Halo, those are two pretty compelling titles and compelling reasons to own these new machines. But between, you know, Halo being pushed and Spider-Man Miles Morales kind of being this cross-gen kind of thing, a lot of that steam is kind of gone. And I don't know, I feel like they're kind of aware of that.
Yeah, by the way, you bring up an interesting point too. We hadn't talked about because things have been moving so quickly, but that Halo Infinite delay seemed so catastrophic, but it doesn't even seem to matter at all now.
Yeah,
which is so funny how things have kind of evolved on that front. So, well, we'll keep an eye out. Resident Evil 8, Resident Evil Village comes out 2021, PS5 for sure, maybe PS4. We'll let you know when the time comes. Let's move on. We have a few more items of news to get through. Number 6, the long-rumored and tortured Mass Effect Trilogy is apparently still coming. More retailers are randomly leaking it seemingly by the day. But website VentureBeat indicates that it won't be coming until 2021. VentureBeat has been talking about this game for a while now and claims that the so-called Mass Effect Legendary Edition is being held up by the original Mass Effect, which, according to the story, quote, does not live up to the quality of the rest of the package, end quote, when it comes to aesthetics especially. The story also reveals what was already fairly obvious. Mass Effect 3's weird multiplayer functionality won't be included in the package. What publisher EA is waiting for when it comes to announcing this package remains to be seen, though as we reported in recent weeks, it appears Electronic Arts is also priming its 2010 racer Need for Speed Hot Pursuit for a remaster, as ratings and retailer leaks indicate. So not much new to say about that, but that's happening. Number 7, a strange snag has been coming up recently, particularly to do with games that began as PlayStation 4 games and are being ported to PlayStation 5. Saves between iterations of the games won't work, or at least they don't have to. For instance, Codemasters Dirt 5 will not allow cross-gen carryovers on PS4 and PS5, even though that functionality will be available on Xbox Series X. Website Push Square points out that Maneater, the peculiar shark game also jumping the PS5 as part of a free update, will not support cross-gen saves either, though they give slightly more information on their website FAQ. The PS5 iteration, quote, is a separate application on PlayStation 5 and trophies, stats, and saves will not transfer, end quote. The same is true for the upcoming game Yakuza Like a Dragon, which doesn't come to PlayStation 5 until March, but which also will not support cross-gen saving. It's important to note that this doesn't mean you can't just play the PS4 iteration of the game on your PS5. You can. You just can't share save files between the two generations on PlayStation, something that apparently is an option, as other developers seem to be working around this. Dustin, do you think this is a big problem? Because this has been percolating in the PlayStation ecosystem for about a week now, and it's a little bit annoying because you're seeing guys like Dirt 5, Codemasters, for instance, coming out and saying, like, we can do it on Xbox, but we can't do it on PlayStation. It just seems like we're getting all this information that is applying chip damage to our precious console, and I don't understand why it doesn't work the way it probably should.
So yeah, it's definitely shitty, because especially if you think about a game like Yakuza, that's a game that you're going to put so many hours into. And so to me, you might as well not even play it on PS4 and hope to play it on PS5. You might as well just wait and start it, because who's going to want to restart that game over again if that's what you were hoping for? So luckily, it's only a temporary problem while we're in this weird cross-gen era. But to me, I just don't know. I don't know the technical aspects of how the save data and the fact that it's an entirely different application. I don't know why you wouldn't be able to like transfer the save, because I've heard of things like that where it's like, hey, you have your save here on PS4. We can transfer it over to PS5, but we can only transfer it there. It can't go back, right? Because they have to change the save in one way or another. To me, that seems like that should be a possibility, but maybe it's just more complicated than I'm thinking.
It must be. I don't know. It's a little frustrating. I don't think it really matters. Like you said, I think we'll be out of this window soon, and this will be an afterthought, but it's something worth keeping in mind in case you're looking to straddle those generations between versions of the game.
Yeah.
Number 8, speaking of random next-gen ports, there are a few more that have been revealed as of late. Japanese publisher Koei Tecmo revealed that its upcoming JRPG Atelier Ryza, that's always Chris's favorite series, which was already coming to PlayStation 4 on December 3rd later this year, will now also come to PlayStation 5 on the same day. Additionally, 2K Sports has revealed that its beloved annualized basketball game NBA 2K21 is coming to PlayStation 5 at launch on November 12th. Indie action game The Pathless has also been confirmed as a PS5 launch game, and there's an interesting piece of information about Godfall, the Gearbox-published Counterplay-developed PlayStation 5 launch game. If you buy it on PC, you'll get it for $10 cheaper than if you buy it on PS5, perhaps putting a rather substantial dent in the prevailing higher game prices narrative. Chris, what do you think about that last point? I was a little surprised to see that Sony would even allow this, even though they're not publishing it. They clearly threw money at this game to get it exclusively on their console in addition to PC. The PC version of the game is $10 cheaper than the PS5 version. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think it kind of makes sense. I think you're going to have a harder time convincing people on PC to pay more for games that presumably, you know, would run on their machines anyway. That they haven't they haven't sunk like $500 into a new machine to play presumably like higher quality, like luxury games, you know, like they're still rocking their old rigs, and they see a new game come out for $70. They're probably going to be like, what? Fuck this. And they've got such a big back catalog that there's even fewer reasons to get, you know, new shit. There's still people playing Counter-Strike Global Offensive, you know what I mean? On PC. It's a very storied platform. So
sure.
I think it's strange because it's clearly you're just better off getting it on PC at that point if you have a PC and a PlayStation. But at the same time, I really don't know how you would convince people on Steam to pay $70 for something that is, that looks, in all fairness, pretty fine. Like Godfall doesn't look like a $70 game to me.
What do you think, Dustin? Do you think that this is a problem for Sony?
So I think it's definitely a problem for Sony, but for the reasoning behind it, the only thing that I can guess is that Godfall is an Epic Games Store exclusive. So not only are they getting some kind of paycheck from Epic to do that, but when they make money on the Epic Games Store, they also make way more than they do on PlayStation due to the fact that Epic just simply does not have the same, they don't demand the same cut that Sony does. So that might be part of the reason. But if I recall, when the jump from 50 to 60 happened, I think there was a delay in the PC space as well that instantly the games did not jump to 70. If I had to guess, I'm thinking that within the next year or two, we will also see PC games jump to 70. But I'm not really sure why that's the case, but that is what I believe happened before.
I think you have to acclimate the idea of like, oh, hey, the idea of like a new game costing $60 or like $70, like in the wild and on console, I feel like makes it more less shocking when it happens on PC as opposed to just like at the start of a new generation when, you don't even really know what these machines do. They haven't really justified their existence. You're not playing on them, so you have no idea what the hell because they're so new. After about a year or so of that, I feel like is when you can reliably start charging more, especially if, you're going to have these games taking full advantage of SSDs and ray tracing. And, ray tracing is nothing new for PC, like people have been paying $60 and sub for ray tracing on their graphics cards. So I feel like that also plays into a part where a lot of the bells and whistles that are new for console players aren't necessarily all that new in the PC space.
Well said. Yeah, we'll see how this goes. I think Dustin brings up a good point, too, about the Epic Game Store exclusivity. That's probably getting them a little bit more money. Sony might not have a problem because now Sony obviously owns a little piece of Epic, as we've discussed in previous months. So maybe that has something to do with it as well. But I found that peculiar. Nonetheless, I wanted to bring that up. Number 9, source code on the web version of the PlayStation Store seems to give us a few more morsels of information about how PlayStation 5 will function when it comes to the store, the PSN, and some other feature sets. This information was originally shared on Reddit and elsewhere on the internet, with the biggest news perhaps being the seeming existence of wish lists on PS5, which is something people have been requesting since 2006. PlayStation Store will also apparently better categorize itself to bubble to the top PS Plus, PS Now, and soon to be PlayStation Collection games, and parties will now apparently accommodate up to 100 people, which seems totally insane. Some of the back-end code does seem to confirm that not all PS4 games will work with PS5. We already knew that. With pre-written error messages ready. One of the error messages seems to indicate that functionality to non-supported games will be introduced with firmware updates. And for those who share their consoles and even accounts with others, it appears that the PS4 rule set of one primary console through which all games can be played by anyone on that machine still exists on PS5. Corey Hahn wrote into us on Patreon, and he says, "Greetings, Colin and Chris. As a form of devil's advocate, why is everyone in a frenzy about the lack of showing off a UI and other features like the PlayStation Store? Do these things actually influence purchase decisions? Hasn't it always been a matter of what games are available on the console and whether the console runs them well? Thanks." Well, from my answer to this, Corey, and I'll be interested to see if the guys agree, is just that I feel like you need your biggest advocates to get as big of a look at as much of a look at your system as possible. And they're the ones that are going to help you sell this thing. So for me, I think that it's much more important for them to show these things off in a meaningful way that generates hype with the hardcore. And then that stuff kind of leaks out to everyone else. I think that when you have a really mysterious, nebulous situation like we have now with a lot of the UI and the features, and like I said, meanwhile, Xbox Series X is literally in people's hands right now in the industry all over the place. A bit of a dichotomy is drawn up there. Dustin, what do you think? Do you think that this, well, first of all, any of these new features interest you? And what do you think about the lack of seeing the UI? We've talked about this quite a bit on the show, but I'm starting to get a little bit wary of why we haven't seen this thing.
Yeah, the 100 people party seems really weird initially, because it's like, who wants to listen to 100 people talking all at the same time? The only thing that I could think of is that maybe they're working on some kind of new party feature where like a streamer could be like, hey, we're playing this battle royale, join this party, and then we can all hop into a game together. So maybe there's something beyond the surface there. As far as showing the UI, and the audience will have to forgive me if I said this last week, but from what Sony has implied about the speed of the SSD, I don't understand why they're not showing off the UI as far as like, hey, here's the UI and here's how fast you can jump into a game. We know that it's so fast that Spider-Man no longer needs loading times, which were notoriously not short. I mean, they weren't terribly long, but they definitely weren't like instant. And especially right now, Xbox is going and they're putting these videos out that's like, hey, here's Outer Worlds on Xbox Series or Xbox Series X and Xbox One X. And look how much faster it loads. It loads in 10 seconds instead of 45, whatever, something. Those aren't the exact numbers. But if Spider-Man can load that fast, then to me, it seems like based on what they've said, there's no contest about overall load times between Xbox Series X and PS5. It just seems like an easy win to me for them to go out and be like, oh yeah, they can load Outer Worlds in 10 seconds. Here's us going from boot to flying through the city on Spider-Man in 2 seconds or whatever. And who knows, maybe they have oversold some of the aspects of the SSD, but there was that leaked video a while back of them showing Spider-Man running and during like a presentation, and it did seem to be as fast as they said. So yeah, it's a little puzzling to me just because of how much of an easy win it is.
Well, we're going to see how this all goes down. I'm hoping that one of these weeks we look at like stupid because they suddenly let everyone know what's going on. But in the meantime, we'll have to just continue to hypothesize and speculate.
Yeah.
Well, let's move on to number 10. This is the wrap up. Website Gamatsu reports that the following games are coming to PlayStation 4 at undetermined points in the future. YouTuber inspired The Angry Video Game Nerd 1 and 2 Deluxe, Metroidvania The Crown Stones Mira, platformer Flatland Volume 2, comedy sim Hoarding Simulator, slot car racer HTR Plus, abstract chess game Knight's Retreat, undead game John the Zombie, turn-based action game Red Ronin, platformer Rift Adventure, spooky adventure Savage Halloween, 2D platformer Spooky Chase, climbing game Super Hiking League, so-called survival racer Tinker Racers, 2.5D brawler War Dogs Red's Return, side-scroller Project Colonies Mars 2120, open world game 171, and beat 'em up 99 Vita's Definitive Edition. Additionally, the website revealed that adventure game ReZero, Starting Life in Another World, The Prophecy of the Throne, Jesus Christ, is coming to PlayStation 4 on January 29th, 2021. Isometric game Beautiful Desolation is coming to PlayStation 4 on February 26th, 2021. In addition, Gamatsu reports that fighting compilations Breakers Collection is coming to PS4 at some point in 2021. Arcade shooter compilation Sikyo Shooting Collection is coming to PS4 and PS5 in 2021. And visual novel Spice and Wolf 2 is coming to PSVR at an unknown point in time. Website Push Square reports that competitive cooking game Cake Bash and dungeon crawler Torchlight 3 are both coming to PlayStation 4 on October 15th. Website IGN has revealed that Dynasty Warriors 9 has been announced and is coming to both PS4 and PS5. That's Dynasty Warriors 9 Empires, by the way. PS4 and PS5 in early 2021. Developer Mossmouth has revealed that its recently released hit game Spelunky 2 will receive crossplay with PC players once co-op is enabled across platforms. Publisher EA reports its popular free-to-play battle royale game Apex Legends is getting crossplay between all applicable platforms, including PlayStation 4, beginning with a beta. Apple-focused website 9to5Mac reports that Apple's Apple TV Plus app is likely being prepped for launch on PlayStation platforms soon, where it has been absent since the service launched in late 2019. I just learned that 2 weeks ago when I went to download it. And finally, publisher Bandai Namco revealed that its fighting game Tekken 7, which came to PlayStation 4 back in 2015, has officially surpassed 6 million units sold.
Ooh.
All right, boys, we're running a little late, a little long here. So we're at the new game releases. We will speed through these as quickly as possible. Tradition dictates that Chris goes first. So we'll do Chris, Dustin, Colin, Chris, Dustin, Colin. Chris, I leave it to you to begin.
Okay, where are we at? Birthday of Midnight comes to PS4 from the creators of Midnight, Midnight Deluxe, and 36 Fragments of Midnight. Oh my god. comes another round of golf-like action fun. Everyone's favorite fairy is back and ready to be once again launched into the sky. But as always, treacherous obstacles like spikes, circular saws, and plenty of other dangerous hazards are par for the course. That's clever, a little golf pun. To earn the to earn a perfect score, you must accurately complete each level in the minimum number of strokes, providing an additional layer of challenge.
I always love using the minimum number of strokes myself.
That's what I was going to say. You're the minimum stroke master. So.
Hell yeah, I am.
All right. Cafeteria Nipponica. Find ingredients, make menus, and run your own restaurant in this sizzling sim. Don your chef's hat and hit the kitchen. You're the chef de cuisine in this scrumptious simulation. It makes me uncomfortable. They'll have you coming back for seconds and more.
Wow.
Run your own restaurant. Find ingredients, research recipes, and spice up your culinary repertoire. Only you can bring your establishment sweet success.
Wow, look at all the French words in there, huh?
I nailed it.
All right, Costume Kingdom comes to PS4. Costume Kingdom is a Halloween-themed turn-based action-adventure game set in a open world environment and played from a third-person perspective. The player takes on the role of Rain, a young child on a quest to beat the Apex Cup while unknowingly saving Halloween.
Oh boy. Damsel comes to PS4. Cause distress in this fast-paced, challenging action platformer. Speed through dozens of missions as Special Agent Damsel. The first and last line of defense against the seedy world of corporate vampires. Rescue hostages, disarm bombs, hack servers, and dispatch the undead with precision, speed, and style. Balance frenetic action with split-second choices, and pay attention. You never know where the next vamp will come from.
Whoa.
Electric Super Joy 2 comes to PS4. Electronic Super Joy is back. Electronic Super Joy 2 is a hardcore platformer set in a world of brain-smashing electronic music. Run, jump, smash, and slice your way through a world of giant monsters. Includes the bonus worlds of the Derp Dragon and the Groove Wizard's Tower. Thank God.
Can't wait to play the Derp Dragon. Liege Dragon comes to PS4 with Abigor, the evil dragon, coming back to life. The Kingdom of Blaze was thrown into confusion. Urine, who has lost his memory, witnesses... Why does everyone lose their memory in role-playing games? Urine, who has lost his memory, witnesses a village being destroyed and heads for the capital, hoping to find something he could do in this time of destruction. Here begins an adventure to find the dragon tools of the three heroes to confront the revived dragon and bring peace to the world.
Mafia Definitive Edition comes to PS4. Remade from the ground up, rise through the ranks of the Mafia during the Prohibition era of organized crime. After a run-in with the mob, cab driver Tommy Angelo is thrust into a deadly underworld. Initially uneasy about falling in with the Salieri crime family, Tommy soon finds that the rewards are too big to ignore.
Maximum Football 2020 comes to PS4. Enhanced game performance, lighting system, player movement, object avoidance, and custom receiver animations. We have also improved lineman interaction, expanded defensive AI, and overhauled the passing game, including more tipped passes, aggressive DBs, faster QB animations.
I was reading about Maximum Football when I was putting this together. This is their third game. I didn't know that. One Finger Death Punch 2 comes to PS4. Spectacle blends with addictive simplicity in One Finger Death Punch 2, a two-button brawler that bleeds style with every kung fu-inspired flurry. Surrounded and outnumbered, you'll need to use any weapon you can get your hands on to take down waves of relentless opponents. Learn a huge variety of skills to unleash with frenetic speed and precision, attack left or right, survive the onslaught, and emerge victorious.
That's the second time frenetic speed and precision was said.
Wow.
Oh boy. Orange Blood comes to PS4. It's the end of the 20th century on a historic timeline different from that which we know. A man-made island off the coast of Okinawa is humming with a dirty, exotic vibe, and it's awesome. Rust and faded concrete glisten in the morning sun, and the late-night neon showing off the various faces of the island.
That game actually looks really good. It's a turn-based shooter, turn-based like chibi shooter. It looks pretty interesting. Yeah.
Panzer Dragoon Remake comes to PS4, a new remade version of the Panzer Dragoon game, true to the original with improved graphics and controls that suit modern gaming standards. On a far lone planet, you encounter two dragons awakened from the ancient times. Armed with a deadly gun from the past and the guidance of your armored blue dragon, you must fulfill your destiny and keep the prototype dragon from reaching the tower or die trying.
That was a Saturn launch game, and so it's kind of cool that it's come to PS4. We'll check that out. Pixel Gladiator comes to PS4. You've been sent to an abandoned planet as one of the participants of the most popular Gladiator show. Your goal is to survive as long as possible, fighting back deadly creatures and the focus of billions of viewers. Kill your enemies to earn money and buy new weapons and upgrades. Defend your base with turrets and traps. You are funded by your audience. Make sure to keep them entertained.
Port Royale 4 comes to PS4. Set sail and join the colonial powers of Spain, England, France, and the Netherlands in their fight for supremacy of the Caribbean in the 17th century. In Port Royale 4, you will take control of a colony as a young and ambitious governor who is eager to learn what it takes to manage and grow his small settlement into a bustling trader city.
Projection First Light comes to PS4. Projection First Light follows the adventures of Greta, a girl living in a mythological shadow puppet world, as she embarks on a journey of self-enlightenment with the assistance of legendary heroes from each culture she explores. Accompanied by atmospheric visuals and an ethereal soundtrack made with antique instruments used for shadow puppet performances, Projection First Light takes players on an inclusive voyage through the history of shadow puppets as it evolves through Indonesia, China, Turkey, and 19th century England.
One woman's journey from Milan to Minsk. That's what I was reminded of when I was listening to that. Rogue Company comes to PS4. The world needs saving and only the best of the best can do it. Rogue Company is a third-person tactical action shooter that puts the fate of the world in your hands. Suit up as one of the elite agents of Rogue Company, each with their own individual set of skills, and go to war in a variety of different game modes.
Swordbreaker the game comes to PS4 and PS Vita. A heroic fantasy interactive story inspired by the classic choose-your-own adventure books. Make crucial decisions that will lead your path to glorious or fatal outcomes, illustrated by over 300 beautiful images.
Troll Hunters, Defenders of Arcadia comes to PS4. Jump into the world of Troll Hunters as Jim Lake Jr. to stop Porgan, the trickster troll, and his sneaky plans. Team up with Claire in couch co-op and get a helping hand from a lot more loved characters to face unknown evil forces and help stop the time-pocalypse. Upgrade your armor and boost your abilities to become more powerful than ever. The fate of the universe is in your hands.
Undead Darlings, No Cure for Love comes to PS4. Journey with a crew of half-zombie girls as you crawl through dungeons, beating up twisted creatures that were born from the fall of society. In fast-paced, turn-based RPG combat, and ultimately deliver the only known cure for what ails your party members to a place where it can be mass-produced.
Warsaw comes to PS4. In a city besieged by enemy forces, the only hope for freedom is to stand up and fight with everything you have. Muster every able body to join the uprising. Loot and salvage what you can to arm your resistance and take on the overwhelming enemy forces that dared invade your home.
All right, and finally, World of Van Helsing Death Trap comes to PS4. Let us take you beyond the veil of the gothic noir world of Van Helsing games, straight into the timeless depths of the twisted otherworld. There is a chain of strongholds in the mists that were once built to keep the horrors of the void at bay. And now these monsters are returning to conquer and kill. Only you can stop them before they break through the everyday world of Borgovia. Choose your hero and defend the silent forts. Use, rebuild, and improve those ancient traps and magical machines.
Interesting. Sounds like a tower defense game. All right, that's all of the games this week. That one game that came up, Swordbreaker, I looked it up because it is coming to Vita. It looks pretty cool. It's just like an adventure game. It looks like it's pretty simple.
Yeah.
Nothing else is really standing out to me too much this week. I do want to pick up Panzer Dragoon because it is a little piece of gaming history. And like I said, that game Orange Blood is interesting looking, although I probably will never play it. All right. Tradition dictates, Chris and Dustin, that we end with 6 questions, comments, concerns, thoughts, and ideas from the audience as submitted to us on Patreon, patreon.com/ColinsLastStand. Definitely go and support us there if you can for early ad-free access and all sorts of other perks, including Sacred Symbols Plus and the ability to submit these inquiries. We'll start with David Graham, who wrote into us and said, Colonicus and Christophorus. I don't like that. This is more so pointed at Colin since Chris's mental illness manifests differently. Have you ever considered using imports to obtain additional trophies? Earlier this year, you expressed disappointment in finding that the standalone releases of the BioShock remasters use the same trophy list as the collection. You stated this was the sole reason you didn't play it, but in that case, you can actually import an EU version and get a second platinum. Sometimes imports use the same trophy list, so this method is purely case by case. Regional locking isn't really a concept in 2020, so do you perhaps simply want to avoid anything vaguely European? Well, that's always my goal in life.
Yeah,
is to avoid anything vaguely European, but I don't think the BioShock remasters can be imported the way you're saying, because only the a la carte versions have new trophies, as I recall. But nonetheless, I have imported games for a variety of different reasons. The last foreign game that I really went crazy with trophies was the Sega Genesis collection from a really long time ago. I got the Australian version of it to get the trophies again for some strange reason. But I typically don't try to do this. It's also really hard in the digital ether to make this happen. It's way more annoying now than it was on the PS3, for instance. I know you guys don't import games and deal with other versions of games for trophies, but do you guys ever import games? I feel like, Dustin, that would be something you would do.
So the only thing I've done is on my Switch, I have a Japanese account that I've tinkered around with. Like, I think when the Switch launched, there was like an exclusive demo for Puyo Puyo Tetris that was only on the Japanese eShop. But that's really the extent of it. I'm not going to lie. I thought about trying to buy Kingdom Hearts 3 early since it was out in Japan. And I decided to just, not do it, because you have to deal with like weird currency issues and stuff if you're buying through the PlayStation Store. But yeah, not so much.
Yeah, I remember when I used to go on the Hong Kong PSN all the time, because I don't know if people remember, they used to post like demos there way early. Like PlayStation All-Stars was there first and all sorts of other stuff. And I remember that you had to have like a fake address and zip code and all sorts of weird shit. It was like there was all sorts of weird manipulation you had to do. So it's not so easy, but it can be done. Chris, this is something I imagine you don't really deal with too much.
Yeah, no. I think the closest I ever came was when I got the Vita. I had seen somewhere that you could play PS1 classics, and I had seen somewhere that you could play specifically Crash Team Racing, and I was trying to get Crash Team Racing on it, and apparently it was like only available through like the EU shop or something. It was some weird, there was something about that was going on, and I looked it up and I immediately gave up, because I was just like, I don't got the time for this.
Yeah, I don't blame you. It's usually not worth it. I used to import games a lot when I worked at IGN because we wanted them just for coverage. I remember getting like JoJo Adventure fighting game, and if I'd go to Japan too. I actually remember one of the times I was in Japan, I bought a bunch of games for IGN, and I remember the woman didn't speak English at the store, but she kept pointing to the back of the box because it says on the back of the box, for use in Japan only. And I'm like, no, it'll work, and it's fine, it'll work. And she was like insisting that it wasn't going to work, and I'm like, no, it'll work. And then I was like second guessing myself the rest of the time I was there about if I was actually going to make these games work or not. All right, Mickey O'Neill wrote into us and said, hey, Christoph and Colleen, do you guys think it's a bit strange that Xbox is getting all the goodwill at the moment? I know Bethesda is a huge get, but that doesn't address their lack of games at launch. You guys suggested that the PS lineup is a tad soft, but Xbox has nothing at all of note. Anyways, cheers for the content, boys. I gotta say to Mickey's question, and the reason I wanted to bring this up, and I'll throw it to Chris first, is he's kind of right. I mean, I try to be fair and balanced, and I want to be that way, but Xbox really doesn't have anything at launch, except for the games that are already on PS5, like Assassin's Creed, and then they have like Gears Tactics, which I'm sure is going to be good, but I know I'm not really an Xbox guy, so maybe I'm missing something. Am I missing something, Chris?
Well, Gears Tactics is good. I've played it already. It's really, really good. I think you would love it, actually. But I would say that the reason they're getting all the goodwill right now is because they're just being the most open, and they're being the most transparent. And they're just talking more, and like we said earlier, this machine is already in people's hands. We've seen the UI. We know like how fast games load. We know all about the features. We know about we know how quick resume works. We just know a lot more about this machine and this user experience. And with them investing in Bethesda, that shows like a really like strong. That shows like at least like a strong wind for the future. But I think honestly, the main reason why they're getting a lot of goodwill right now is because from the minute that you get an Xbox Series X, I feel like you know what you're going to be able to do, and you have this huge backlog, this huge library of games with Game Pass especially, that's just going to work with this machine that is going to work better with this machine than it has with previous machines. It's just more of an ecosystem right now. Whereas PS5, we went over it earlier with Spider-Man and some of these other games, where like we don't even really know confidently what PS4 games we're going to really be able to reliably play on this thing when we get this machine, because both machines are launching with like a really, a pretty soft launch lineup, I would say, which is why it's really, really important this is like where backwards compatibility shines, you know what I mean? And I feel like because they have so much goodwill in that category, I just feel like people have a better understanding as to what they're going to do with this machine than they do with the PS5 once they're done with Demon's Souls or once they're done with Spider-Man. I think that's just, you're not wrong that there's not really much available on Xbox. There's Gears Tactics. I think the Medium, I'm not sure. But yeah, I would say that in general, this launch lineup is pretty tame and underwhelming. But that's not really what the strength is.
Yeah, they have momentum, which I think matters actually more than the launch library, which is good for them for their long-term prospects. Dustin, do you have anything to add?
I guess the only thing that I'm thinking is that they're getting a lot of goodwill because they're making a lot of consumer-friendly moves. I mean, just the other day, we saw, there's a video specifically I want to shout out from Digital Foundry that was showing off the backwards compatibility and how so many of these older games on Series X are running way better. Specifically, if there's an unlocked frame rate, it's taking games that were maybe on the shakier side and bringing them up to a locked 60.
Yeah, I saw that with Grand Theft Auto 4. Grand Theft Auto 4 runs at like 60 frames per second.
Right.
Like locked. And that's insane. That's really cool that you can do that.
The other really interesting thing, and that they teased this a little bit in the Digital Foundry video, is that apparently Microsoft is working on some way that they can make games that are locked, potentially that are locked 30 or a locked frame rate, and override the game to have them run better. Now, this has not been officially announced. It's just kind of what's been teased. So maybe this won't come to fruition in quite a fantastic way, but if that's true, that is really huge. Not only that, first of all, their backwards compatibility is actually fully working from Xbox One to Xbox Series X, but if it can make your games significantly better, then that's a really big deal. So I think that, it sucks that there's not a lot of games at launch, and actually specifically from their first party, there aren't any games, but there's so many other just like, oh, here's this awesome thing and here's this awesome thing that, that's going to start to generate some positive conversation around the launch.
Well, we're going to find out. I'm really going to be keeping a close eye on the optics, and that's why I wanted to discuss the optics so badly on Sacred Symbols Plus a couple of weeks ago, because it just felt like such an important aspect that people are not really paying attention to. The optical game is just so much in Microsoft's favor right now, but it might not matter. I mean, when we get the sales figures, we're going to know one way or the other. We're only a month and a half away from really having a better idea of how this landscape shapes up. But they're both doing it with one arm tied behind their back. So we will find out if the games matter. I think they do. Adam Kelm wrote into us and said, "Hey, Colin and Chris, is it possible that Horizon Forbidden West is coming sooner than we think? The general idea I see is that it is expected to be Sony's big fall 2021 game, but with it being cross-gen, it feels like maybe it will be ready to go earlier than that. Sony seems to really like having 3 first or second party exclusives every year. So is it possible that we see Ratchet & Clank in the early spring, Horizon early summer, then God of War Ragnarok as a PS5 exclusive in the fall? That would keep the cross-gen window open for less than a year and essentially signal that all first party games going forward would be on the PS5 only. Just a thought, and curious what you guys think. As always, keep up the great content." I like where your head's at, Adam. I don't think that Horizon can come out any later than 2021. I do think that first party support on PS4 in 2022 would look really weird. And I think that would work against Sony's entire generational approach, or what they said was their generational approach. But I think it could be that Horizon might be a little closer. We did get that winter DLC, that standalone DLC, or it might not be a standalone, I don't even remember, for Horizon. But the game did come out almost 4 years ago. As I told people, Forbidden West did start as a PS4 game and was ported to PS5, so it's natively on PS4. So it could be that it's ready to go sooner than we think, but I don't know that any of these games, with the exception of Ratchet, will be ready before spring. And I think Chris and I discussed last week, I think And I think Chris agrees God of War is going to get delayed.
Yeah.
I don't think that was ever going to be in 2021. Chris, what do you think about Horizon maybe being ready to go sooner than we think?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's possible. I definitely think I think that would be an interesting lineup. I don't know if I would going Ratchet and Clank early and then Horizon in the middle and then God of War at the end. I don't know if I agree with that order. I feel like if I was really trying, I would probably put Horizon out first. I would probably put Horizon out in spring and then Ratchet in the summer and then God of War in the fall, because God of War is no question like the big one, I think, out of those titles. Horizon is very good and people love it, but God of War has like, you know, a very storied history and a very storied momentum. I personally think it's my favorite game on the PS4. But I don't know if you want to necessarily have two, you know, realistic open world-esque action titles, especially ones that are like kind of vaguely RPG inspired, close in the same way that like summer and fall are close. Like I feel like you'd want Horizon to come out early, give it room to breathe, and then you have this kind of fun little cute summer game with Ratchet, and then to kind of be like almost like a palate cleanser, and then kind of jump back in with God of War at the end, assuming that God of War comes out in 2021, which I just don't believe would be the case.
Yeah, it seems too soon.
Yeah, it seems too soon, and also I just don't get why they would have shown so little if it really was a fall 2021 game. I get that development is kind of screwed right now in general for everybody, but that didn't strike me as a next year teaser. You know what I mean? That seemed like this might be a ways away, and I would guess 2022.
Yeah, it's interesting because I agree with your order of operations. Just because it would get the Insomniac games away from each other, I don't know that really matters, but I just think it sucks for them to release two games so quickly, one after the other, because they're not able to really promote and support both of those games in that time period the way that they might have otherwise wanted to internally. So that would be a major concern of mine, but I still think that the way that they showed Ratchet and Clank indicates that it will come first.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
And Horizon does fit in that early year time frame, though, remembering, of course, that Horizon Zero Dawn was a Q1 game and I think benefited a great deal from that back in 2017. Dustin, what do you think about the possible release windows and Adam's kind of proposed 3-game stagger for 2021?
So on the opening night live thing that Keighley did, they said that Ratchet and Clank is a launch window game, which obviously there's no set definition of what launch window means, but to me, at least, that would mean in the first 3 months of the life of the console, which I don't know, maybe we could have like an infamous Second Son situation that we'll get Ratchet and Clank in like February or March, which would be interesting. As far as Horizon, I mean, I don't know, we're going off so little. I could see at the very earliest late summer, spring, like you guys said. Ragnarok, yeah, I have a little faith about 2021 also.
That might have been possible before COVID, but I don't see how that they can keep that schedule. It is worth noting that God of War came out in 2018, but I do think that Ragnarok is going to be a full next gen game, and so it's not like they can work with the exact same tools that they worked on the first time. So we'll see what happens. I do know what you're saying about Ratchet, but the way that they're talking about Ratchet now, and by that I mean not at all, indicates to me that maybe we won't get it very soon. I mean, I have to say that that's the game I'm most eager to play out of probably all of them, because I just want to see, it seems like the most next gen game.
Yeah.
In my mind. I'm eager to play it.
No, yeah,
I like
I
Ratchet.
agree.
All right, let's move on to Dennis Johnson. He wrote in here and he said, "Hey, CNC, I've long been baffled by the assertion that Sony owes some, if not a lot, of the PS4 success to Xbox's E3 reveal and debacle in 2013. Sure, the core had a good laugh with seeing Shuhei share games on PlayStation, but there's no way the mainstream made their purchase decision on Xbox's unforced errors. You often mention how the PS3 ended up winning its generation in pure sales numbers, albeit everyone was too busy playing COD on Xbox 360 because Xbox Live and exclusives to notice. Yet you continue to say no console has repeated a back-to-back winner, while the PS4's success surely bucks that trend. All this to give some love to our dearest PlayStation. They are a household name that has, for the most part, held up their end of the bargain, quality games on quality hardware that speak to audiences all across the globe. We hate them, we love them, we hold their feet to the fire. We hope they take some cues from Xbox and Jesus Christ, even Nintendo. But at the end of the day, they're ours. I see many people sticking with sacred symbols or even turning to PlayStation on name alone. It's not a pass for a flimsy marketing push of their next generation console, but given the current state of things, I think I can live and know that some of my favorite titles are just on the horizon and hope for some pleasant surprises along the way. Thanks for all the hard work, gentlemen. I like Dennis's letter because it painted a little bit of a more positive patina on things we've been talking about in recent weeks, which I respect. I'm curious, Chris, how much do you think Sony does owe their win to Xbox's stumbling? Because I think Dennis is way underselling it. It's not a matter of people witnessing it happen or even knowing that it happened. It's about the way people cover it that then those people see. So if you're like reading the Wall Street Journal or USA Today, the whole coverage is going to be painted by that. You might not even know what happened, but you're going to know it based on the coverage itself.
Well, that, and also I think the way I think there's a confusion as to like, oh, just the way the media reacted or the way people reacted to the decisions that Microsoft was making. No, it was the management at Microsoft that made those decisions in the first place that allowed them to stumble so hard is exactly what helped them. The fact that the Xbox was bundled with this camera, this $100 camera that you couldn't get it separated, the fact that you couldn't share games, the fact that it was always online DRM, all of these management decisions that Xbox made, that adds up. It's more than just, oh, you can share games and look at this viral video of Sony sharing. It's more than that. It's when people go to the store and they see, hey, here's a new PlayStation that is, how much did the PlayStation 4 launch at? What was the price?
$400.
$400. And then you have this $500 Xbox with a big ass camera on it. That alone, that by itself is just a stupid decision. And in tandem with everything else that they made, I just feel like they just handed Sony a lot of goodwill. And it's not that Sony didn't have goodwill. It's not to say that they wouldn't have done amazing. I still think there's a pretty good chance that they probably could have won. But the extent at which they just dominated this generation, I think, is no question owed in large part to the mismanagement of Xbox when Don Matrick was steering the ship. I don't think you could reasonably argue against that.
Yeah, I concur with you. What do you think about that, Dustin?
Yeah, I'm pretty much 100% in agreement with Chris. The thing that I want to add too, that was like something that I think that Xbox really learned from, especially with that initial console, is that they not only was there all this bad messaging and the camera and stuff like that, but they were asking people to pay more money for a console that was, I would say, significantly less powerful than the cheaper console with PlayStation 4. I remember the headlines about like, oh, this game runs at 1080p on PS4 and it runs at 900p and maybe even in some circumstances 720p on the Xbox One.
Yeah.
And I think people were like, wait, so I'm buying a next gen console that doesn't necessarily even play games at 1080p for more money.
Yeah.
Like, that's just something that all of that combined just, spells disaster. And I think Xbox learned from that because they're like, yeah, never again are we releasing a console that power is not the main focus, which I guess the Series S sort of is in line. But since they have the Series X, I think it just provides more options. But yeah, it was a recipe of a lot of things, not just that reveal.
Yeah. I think Sony's Steam, like leading into that generation, was really good. I think obviously they ended the generation with The Last of Us, which is like nothing to scoff at. But I really, you cannot overstate just how badly they fucked up on price alone and then everything around it. It's undeniable, I think.
Yeah, I think he's right in the sense that you can't just win by virtue of being there.
Yeah.
But they definitely were helped out. I mean, it was just, you can't look at just the enthusiasts and our engaged way of dealing with the industry. I really think that it's reflected in the way it's covered by everyone, and that leaks out into the greater ecosystem. And I think it's just like anything else. Like, it's a weird example, but Consumer Reports, which my dad's always loved that magazine. And that's a magazine that's not read by a lot of people, but then you start hearing, right? Like, if you ever go to like car dealership, or you go to like a hardware store and you hear people, or you're talking to someone and it's like, oh yeah, Consumer Reports gave that a really good review. It's like, you don't even really need to know that. You just know that it's got a good vibe. This LG refrigerator has got a really good review, and you didn't read it, but someone told you about it. I feel like that's kind of the way it goes with video games and everything else too. So Xbox really fucked that up. I think it's actually a testament to the brand and to their staying power and to their leadership that they've been able to turn it around, and their money, that they've been able to turn it around the way that they have. So
yeah,
I appreciate
that would have decimated most people, I feel like.
Yeah, Sony was in, people can go read the financial statements from 2007, 2008, 2009. Sony was fucking horrifyingly hurt from PS3. It was horrible. I mean, they were losing billions of dollars, and Sony would not have been able to survive Xbox One, I don't think. At least they would have definitely withdrawn it at some point. I mean, you think about Dreamcast, Sega took Dreamcast off the market after fewer than 2 years, because they couldn't afford the losses. So in some cases, the more consoles you sell, the more money you lose, which is also the irony of being in the business. But thank you, Dennis, for writing in. Michael Lamaro wrote into us and said, hi, Colin and Chris. Which PS5 game do you guys think people are sleeping on the most? For me, it has to be Returnal from Housemarque. I was blown away by the initial trailer, and after learning that the game is a third-person shooter roguelike, I can't wait to get my hands on it. Thanks as always for the kick-ass show. Thank you, Michael. I'm always into anything Housemarque makes, but I wish they would just get back to basics already and stop with this nonsense. With the third-person shooter rogue, it's like, that's not what you guys make. It's not what I want from you. I don't think anyone wants that from Housemarque. I guess Michael does. So I'm gonna buy it, and I hope it's great. I gotta say, guys, my answer to this question is Sackboy's Big Adventure. I'm only dealing, by the way, in like launch library area. I saw the trailer for this. I don't know if you guys saw the gameplay that was posted of this a day or two ago. It looks really good. It looks like a fun, cute 3D platformer. There's no creation tools in it. I was watching a video with Sumo Digital where they were saying the whole create, share, play thing, they're just doing play. That's all they're going to do with their game. And I think that that's really fun because they have experience with both. They're, of course, the same studio that made Little Big Planet 3. And I think we need a game like this at launch. This is also available on PS4, so you don't have to play it on PS5. But that's what Knack did for PS4 when it launched. And I know Knack's a joke now, but you need something that's family friendly and attractive to moms and dads and kids, and is accessible so that when dad or mom is playing the, Godfall at night and little Billy gets up in the morning, he has something to play too. So I'm really intrigued by the prospect of this game actually doing pretty well as well. But I think it looks good. I want people to go check out the trailer and decide for themselves. Dustin, what do you think is the game that on PS5 people are sleeping on?
I don't really know. I'm struggling to find an answer here. I mean, I think I'm also interested in the Sackboy game as well, just because, especially after coming off of playing the Mario 3D All-Stars collection, I'm kind of on this high of 3D platformers. But as far as games coming pretty soon, I guess one that I've got my eye on is that the unfortunately titled Immortals Phoenix Rising, just because I like the overall aesthetic of the game. It's kind of different for Ubisoft to make something along those lines. So that's one that I'm watching out for. I think that's on December 3rd. So a little bit after launch.
It is. And you also like games with horrible names. So that's right up your alley.
right.
As well. What about you, Chris? What do you think?
I'll be real. I don't think there's much happening or much that's coming out that isn't already like super exciting, like the Spider-Man and Ratchets and stuff like that we presume is launch window are obviously the things that I'm excited about. But I think as far as like a game that's going to be on PS5 that I think could potentially be a little bit surprising, I think I feel like from a premise standpoint alone, Watch Dogs Legion is interesting. And I feel like I don't know if people are sleeping on it necessarily because it's just a Watch Dogs game, but I think the permadeath model for a game like that is really interesting, and it's not just a cookie cutter thing. It's not something that everybody else is doing. It breathes a little bit more uniqueness into that series that I think might surprise people. I have no real insight into like whether or not it's going to be good, but of the kind of generalized kind of, third-party launch window type deal that we're used to dealing with. I feel like that has potential to be pretty more interesting than it appears.
Right on.
Real quick, can I change my answer?
Sure.
Hitman 3. Because people have been sleeping on Hitman for too long.
Oh yeah, well,
and
that's not me. I'm not sleeping on Hitman.
Right? Yeah, I know you. I've been listening. So I always appreciate the shout out to Hitman. So yeah, good. Hitman 3. I don't want to say I guarantee it's going to be awesome, but the other two are so good, and I have no reason to believe the Hitman 3 won't be incredible.
Hitman's another one of those games that I'm really bad at, but I adore it.
Yeah,
it's a good answer. I didn't even think of that, to be honest with you. IO Interactive, that game. Yeah, that's early 2021.
Yeah, it's like January.
Yeah.
Oh, look at that.
Cool. Very well done. All right. Final question comes from Jeff Pollard. We talked a little bit about this earlier, but he says, hey guys, Microsoft seems to have had no problem letting the media take a look at the Xbox Series X console, sending out mock-ups and now actual working consoles for them to examine. I'm curious why Sony has not done this. Do you think it's because they want to delay the inevitable side-by-side size comparisons like the Xbox One went through? That could be. I remember making fun of the Xbox One. I actually got into an argument with someone before we saw the consoles side by side where I'm like, that Xbox One console is massive. And people were like, no, it's not. It's not. I'm like, it's huge. It's way bigger than PS4. And it ended up being the case. I don't know that matters so much. I think it might matter more because I think the PS5 is so hideous compared to the Xbox Series X from its aesthetic. But I don't know that has anything to do with it either. And it's worth noting, I just want to double down on this and let everyone know. We've kind of made the decision, not that Sony likes us or wants to work with us anyway, but we're not going to get the PS5 early. We're buying our own. We're basically not going to work with PR or marketing at all anymore in any respect. It's just easier that way. We can afford to buy our games. You guys are kind to us and we can do all of that. So even if we were to be able to get PS5 early, I think I would actually decline it because I think part of our appeal at this point is being outsiders. So I wanted to throw that out there. Mm-hmm. But I do think, as I said earlier, boys, I think it's peculiar that Sony has not sent the PS5 out yet. Now, I was in the industry when PS4 came out. We did not have them at this time, but we had a lot of access to them. We can go to Sony to get them and play with them. They would have all sorts of events. Things have obviously panned out differently here in 2020. I do think it's a little weird that no one has this console yet. I don't know what they're waiting for. I think it has to do with firmware. Chris, what is your guess?
I would guess firmware too, but I actually do think that the size does matter. I feel like this thing, based on what we've seen, and maybe the estimations that we've seen are way off, but this thing is freaking huge by all metrics that we've seen so far. So I like significantly bigger than a generic console has ever really been. And I remember when I saw the Series X and I thought, oh, that's huge, like the tower kind of like monolith look. I was like, that's freaking enormous. And then the PS5 comes out and it's like hilariously huge. I do think that probably is a factor, especially because we haven't really seen how the machine runs yet. We haven't seen the firmware. We haven't seen the UI. If they sent all that stuff out, I feel like the first thing people would report on is probably like, this thing is fucking huge. Yeah,
it looks enormous. I gotta say, it looks, and it's ugly, man. It's just an ugly machine. I don't know. Maybe I'll feel differently when we get it. But Dustin, what do you think? Why do you think they're holding out?
Yeah, I mean, I think that both the Series X and the PS4 are certified chonkers 100%, but I don't know, that doesn't really bother me, and I don't know if it really bothers the people that are buying these day one. Honestly, I think that Sony is enjoying the mystique, and I think that, I don't know, we've had a lot of conversations about whether or not that's hurting them, but this past week we've started to see them open up with some games, like we've saw Sackboy, and we learned more about Spider-Man. So I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised if within the next week or two, we start to learn more, since they've kind of started that process. But who knows? Maybe I'm totally wrong. Maybe we won't see anything at all.
Yeah, you're right. They have been starting to talk specifically a lot about pre-order bonuses and stuff for Demon Souls and Sackboy, like you said, and Miles Morales. So yeah, we might have more information soon, but I'm not hopeful. And I do think, to Chris's point as well, I think they're holding out for the firmware situation, since it probably doesn't really function without being online. So you can't just mess around with it, probably offline. So we'll see how that all pans out. And yeah, I'm looking forward to having this gigantic megalith next to my television. I have a 70-inch or a 60-inch television, right? That's 60-inch, right, Dustin? That's what I have?
65.
65-inch? Yeah. And I only know that because Dustin picked out my TV. But I imagine someone having a smaller TV and the PS5 is going to be like bigger than your TV. It's going to be crazy.
Yeah, it based on what I've seen, it's like bigger than my PC is, and my PC is pretty freaking huge.
Yeah, I can't wait to see how big it is. I can't wait. So close now, you can almost taste it. You can smell it.
Yeah, I wonder what it's going to smell like.
I know. Hopefully plastic and all sorts of fumes I can get high on, as I usually look for in those kinds of boxes.
Yeah.
All right, boys. That's it for episode 118 of Sacred Symbols, a PlayStation podcast. We hope you enjoyed it. Please let us know what you thought of our first attempt at doing a 3-chair episode of the show. I don't think it was. What did you guys think? I don't think it was any different, really.
Yeah.
Feels good to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That went well.
And I always say, do what feels good. That's always my mantra. Do what feels good.
Yes, hedonism.
Hedonism, exactly. All right. Well, that's all we have. Thank you, boys, for your time. Love you guys. Chris, glad you're alive and well.
I am.
Especially. And Dustin will talk soon as well, of course, as we often do. And everyone out there, thank you for your love, kindness, and support of our show, of our Patreon, and all the other things that we do, whether it's Snark Tank or Handsome Phantom or any of those other spin-offs, those minor shows compared to this here home planet. We'll see you next time for more Sacred Symbols. Until then, goodbye.
Take care, guys.
Sacred Symbols, a PlayStation podcast, is a product of and a registered trademark of Colin's Last Stand, LLC, and is recorded from Richmond, Virginia, and Burbank, California, USA. This show is conceived by, is written by, and is produced by me, Colin Moriarty. My co-host is Chris Raygun. You can find me on Twitter at NoTaxation and on Instagram at CLS Moriarty. Chris is on Twitter at Chris R. Gunn and on Instagram at Chris_Ray_Gun. Sacred Symbols is edited by Dustin Furman. To message the show online, please use Patreon's DM service. As you know, all of Colin's Last Stand shows, including Sacred Symbols, are fan-funded on Patreon at patreon.com/ColinsLastStand. The following names are at the producer level or higher on Patreon, and we are eternally grateful for your kindness, generosity, and fandom. Paul Joyce, Ryan T. Mandel, Jorge Palomino, Enrique Perez, Don Lee, Brad Cooley, SL the FMA, Daniel D'Amore, Patrick Leslie, Jeremy Key, Joey Finelli, Azan, Ben, Michael Vecchio, Morgan Ashley, Miguel A. Brewer, Isaac Wastman, Zach Parsley, Ross Marenka, Jerome Ferreira, Stephen Nieder, Gregory Slavinsky, Bjorn Campbell, An Unofficial Controller Podcast, Andrew Morgan, Constantine Valencia, Nick DeMarco, Jariah King, Homeworld Hub, Shane Rayum, Mark Boggio, Jonathan Reich, Chad Lewis, Keith A. Lewis, Lennon Brixey, Peter Reynolds, Greg Juliff, Spencer Brand, Joe McPartlin, Eric Finkenbeiner, Lou and Ray Loper, Josh Bushing, Betty Ann Moriarty, John Schultz, David Chestnut, Tony Zuniga, Alex Cabrera, Corey Wyatt, Adam Nix, Michael Gates, Alex Gates, Sean Chandler, Petro Rose, Justin Wagaman, Tyler Harris, Toby Shootman, Madmock Media, Lawrence F. Prokop, Toothless Gibbon, Martin Beck, Donnie Nolan, Todd Paxton, Josh Yeager, Miranda Grubba, Michael S., Marius Garson Peterson, William O'Carroll, Mike Wayne, Mubarak, Gerald Pennington, Phil Crone, Dylan Burns, Brian Chan, Connor Gashian, Throw7, Josh Gravelick, Tyler Bello, Anton K., Sean Battershaw, Gio Corsi, Josh McKinney, Alan Tremblay, James Kinslow III, John Cordero, Organic Produce, Carl Tolman, Richter 86, Nathan R., Joshua Smallwood, McDog 18, Patrick Harper, George Anthony Nunez, Kyle Hagel, Colin Love, Ryan R. Kittredge, Barrett Boswell, Hugo's Desk, Chris Buston, Sean Mason, Damon Weathers, Matthew Purdue, Jesse Owen, Chris Galvin, Ryan Murdoch, Colin Davenport, Blake Israel, Sci-Fi Book Club, Auntie Kinnanen, Taylor Barkley, Scott Lovelace, Andrew Parker, Robbie Hensley, Rodney Coleman, Chris Moore, Gavin, Bloody Fang, Eric Harden, Matt Martin, Mason Cadillac, Richard Hebert III, Saul Balcazar, Raul Melendez, Kevin Komaki, Of Fortuna, Boots, Megadet, TB Lightning, Galja, Darren Gardner, Daryl E. Naiman, David Castanez, Greg Lotta, Christopher DeVio, Ray Leja, Jay Getter, Vexius, JJ Game, Jeff McCardo, Zach Bonham, Colin Jewell, Nelson LeBlanc, Daniel Johnson, Letteriant Johnson, Nick Thornton, and Casual Misfits Gaming. I'll be back, guys. I just got to bring Rush downstairs because he just woke up. Just give me one second.
All right, since you're going, I'm going to pee real quick, too.
Okay, all right. I'll be back.
All right. Now, that was ripping a fat piss.
Nice.
Right there.
I was going to ask you if you had a little trickle action like I do, or...
I was getting flashbacks to Attack of the Clones, which, I mean, just brought back a ton of bad feelings overall. So
I bet. All right.